Chapter 3032. The White-Eyed Wolf looked around and whispered to Qin Feiyang and Madman. When the two of them heard this, they looked at each other. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and said, "I knew you couldn't come up with any good ideas. Isn't this a good idea?" The White-Eyed Wolf was displeased. The Madman thought for a bit and laughed. "It's a bad idea, but it's not bad." "See, even this kid said it's not bad, then it's definitely not bad." The White-Eyed Wolf smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang looked at the Madman and the White-Eyed Wolf speechlessly and nodded. "Okay, although it's not very good, it's the fastest way." "Then let's go." The White-Eyed Wolf smiled. Wang. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and opened a teleportation altar. The two men and the wolf walked up. At the same time, the city, Lord's mansion. In a large hall, a middle-aged man in black sat above. He was about 1.8 meters tall and had a cold face and sharp eyes. Below him sat a middle-aged man. This man was Wang Hui. Wang Hui looked at the sky outside and then looked at the middle-aged man in black and said respectfully, "Lord Zhuo, it's about time. We should prepare, right? They're just two half-step immortal realm ants. What's there to prepare? As long as they dare to come, I guarantee that they won't be able to return." The middle-aged man in black said with disdain, "But I'm worried that they won't come if they find out you're here." Wang Hui said anxiously, "Okay, for the sake of the divine artifact in his hand, I'll suffer." The middle-aged man in black was Wang Hui's savior, Zhuo Tiansheng. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhuo Tiansheng disappeared from the hall. Wang Hui also retracted his gaze and walked to the main seat above. He looked outside the hall and shouted, "Everyone leave immediately. No matter what happens later, don't come over." There were many guards outside the door. Hearing Wang Hui's words, they all left quickly. After a while, there wasn't even a single ghost in the hall or its surroundings. It was deathly silent. "I was just waiting for you guys to come to me." A cold smile flashed across Wang Hui's eyes. "Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you control me? Naive." However, as time slowly passed, Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf still did not appear at the city lord's mansion. At the same time, Mo Lu, in Li Yunxia's study. At this moment, Li Yunxia looked at the two people and the dog suspiciously. Just a moment ago, the two people and the dog had suddenly appeared in her study. Most importantly, he had never seen it before. "You are?" Li Yunxia came back to her senses and asked suspiciously. Faced with Li Yunxia's questioning, one of the young men smiled and swallowed a face-restoring pill. Soon, he changed into another face. Who else could it be but Qin Feiyang? That was right. They did not go directly to the city lord's mansion. Instead, they changed their appearances and came to the Demon Tower. Li Yunxia stared blankly for a moment before she smiled. "So it's you. You must have some matters to discuss with me, right?" Qin Feiyang said, "I do have a small matter that I need your help with." "Go ahead." Li Yunxia smiled. Qin Feiyang asked, "Do you know Zhuo Tiansheng?" "Zhuo Tiansheng?" Li Yunxia was slightly stunned. After pondering for a while, she looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Are you talking about the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City?" "Yes, that's him." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Why are you suddenly asking about him?" Li Yunxia looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "It's a private matter." Qin Feiyang smiled vaguely. As the Tower Lord of the Demon Tower, Li Yunxia was naturally a tactful person. She knew what to ask and what not to ask. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was being vague, she did not pursue the matter. She nodded and said, "I know this person. I've seen him a few times before. Not only is he the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City, he's also very powerful." "Then, do you know if there's anyone around him who he particularly cares about?" Qin Feiyang was curious. Very concerned. Li Yunxia pondered for a moment. Then her eyes suddenly lit up and said with a smile, "I remember that he has a daughter. I think her name is Zhuo Shaoxian. He loves her very much." "Zhuo Shaoxian," Qin Feiyong muttered. At the same time, the madman and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other, and a hint of a smile flashed across their eyes. Then, is this Shua Shaoxian strong? Qin Feiyong asked. How strong can a little girl be? She's probably only at the 9 heavens realm. Li Yunxia smiled faintly. All right then, senior. Please give me the coordinates of the Wind Sea City. Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled. You want to go to the Wind Sea City? Li Yunxia was stunned. I'm not going, they're going. Qin Feiyong pointed at the madman and the white-eyed wolf. Li Yunxia looked at the man and the wolf and frowned. May I ask, do you have any grudges with Zhuo Tiancheng? We don't even know where the Wind Sea City is. How can we have any grudges with him? We just want to take a look at the big city. Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Li Yunxia was speechless. Do you even believe your own words? But she didn't ask any further and told Qin Feiyong the coordinates along the way. Because one teleportation altar couldn't reach the Wind Sea City, they had to pass through many places. Naturally, they needed the coordinates to pass through these places. Qin Feiyong looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf and said with a smile, Remember it, come back quickly. I'll wait for you at the city, Lord's mansion. Don't worry. The madman and the white-eyed wolf laughed and immediately activated an altar and left. Qin Feiyong retracted his gaze and changed his appearance and looked at Li Yunxia with a smile. Thank you, senior. You're welcome. Li Yunxia waved her hand, and then seeing that Qin Feiyong was about to leave, she hurriedly said, I've already told Su Yang to go to the Demon Palace. Qin Feiyong was slightly stunned and said with a smile, Then it seems that the token is really useful. Hearing this, Li Yunxia couldn't help but smile bitterly. Do you know who the owner of the token is? I know, a woman called Chu Yun. Qin Feiyong nodded and then asked, But is this important? Li Yunxia was speechless for a moment. Was it important? Of course it was important, but looking at Qin Feiyong's indifferent expression, she didn't know how to refute. Then this junior will take his leave first. In addition, I came to ask you about Zhuo Tianqing today. Please don't mention it to anyone else. After Qin Feiyong finished speaking, he turned around and left the study. What an unfathomable little fellow. Li Yunxia shook her head, retracted her gaze, and continued to busy herself with the matter at hand. Let's talk about Qin Feiyong. After leaving the Demon Tower, he went straight to the city Lord's mansion. The city Lord's mansion covered an area of dozens of miles, with gorgeous palaces looking incomparably imposing. The mansion was surrounded by a wall that was more than 2 meters high. Through the window bars of the wall, one could clearly see a garden full of flowers, as well as a small stream that was so clear that one could clearly see it. Moreover, the security inside was also extremely awe-inspiring. There was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 7 steps. The lowest cultivation level of those guards was at the great perfection 9 heavens realm. Thinking about it, in the ancient world, the 9th heaven stage was already considered a first-class expert. But in the sky cloud realm, they could only be reduced to a guard. Speaking of which, it was really lamentable. Qin Feiyong observed for a while, then activated the concealment technique and quietly sneaked into the city, Lord's mansion. What do you think is going on here? The city, Lord actually sent away all the guards around him, and he also warned them that no matter what happens, they're not allowed to go over. Is that so? Yes, I just met those guards and they said it themselves. Then that's strange. Do you think it has something to do with the 2 ruthless people who robbed the Su family? Those 2 people are really ruthless. I've been in Tianfeng City for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen someone who dares to come to Tianfeng City openly and rob a family. And it's a big family like the Su family. The most frightening thing is that they actually escaped from the city, Lord's hands. I think their ability should not be as simple as what we see. The guards of the city, Lord's mansion, were basically discussing this matter in a low voice. Qin Feiyang listened to these discussions and couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Withdrawing all the guards, this was because he was afraid that people would know that he was controlled by others. A dignified city lord being controlled by others. That was a very shameful thing. Moreover, Qin Feiyang also didn't hear the discussion about the commander. It was estimated that this news was deliberately concealed by the city lord. After some searching, Qin Feiyang came to a lake. The lake was about half a mile long, and the clear lake water was covered by layers of ripples under the gentle breeze. The lake was also heavily guarded, and just opposite the lake there was an exquisite attic. The attic had 3 floors, antique and incomparably gorgeous. Qin Feiyang silently walked to the front of the attic. The door was open, and there was a noise coming from inside. "Mother, how long do I have to stay here?" This was the voice of a young man, and his tone was full of irritation. "Don't worry. Your father said that after killing those 2 people, you can go out and play." This was the voice of a woman, full of doting. "Then when can I kill them?" The young man's voice sounded again. "Soon. Just stay here at ease. Don't run out on your own." Those 2 people even dared to rob the Su family. It can be seen that they are outlaws. If you meet them again, it will be dangerous. You must be obedient. Otherwise, when your father gets angry and really imprisons you, then it's useless for me to plead for you." The woman comforted. "Got it," the young man said, his voice full of impatience. "You child," the voice fell, accompanied by a series of footsteps, and a woman in her 30s with heavy makeup walked out of the attic. And in front of the door there were 2 guards. Both of them had reached the perfect imperishable realm, which was already very strong, but they didn't notice Qin Feiyang standing to the side. "Greetings, madam." Seeing the woman come out, the 2 hurriedly bowed. At the same time, Qin Feiyang silently passed by the woman and went straight into the attic. After entering the attic, he saw a young man in purple sitting in front of the tea table in the hall, his face full of anger. At the door, the woman looked at the 2 guards and whispered, "You 2 have to look after Feng. Without our permission, he is not allowed to take half a step out of here." "Yes, madam," the 2 respectfully replied. "Feng, be good." The woman turned around and smiled at the young man sitting in the hall, then closed the door and turned to leave quickly. "Damn bastards, I'm locked up here because of them. Just you wait. Even if father kills you, I won't let your bodies go. When the time comes, I will chop your bodies into pieces and feed them to the dogs." The young man clenched his fists, his face full of hostility. That's right. This person was the son of the city lord that Qin Feiyang and the woman met in Tianyue Tower, Wang Feng. Chapter 3033. However, before his voice died away, Wang Feng suddenly felt an invisible big hand grabbing his shoulder. The next moment, he appeared in a strange place. Wang Feng was surprised. Now he was in a stone room. The 4 sides were closed, and the stone door was also closed. It was very dark. What was this place? Want to chop me into pieces and feed me to the dogs? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. A voice sounded next to him. When Wang Feng heard this voice, his face suddenly changed, because he would never forget this voice for the rest of his life. Immediately, he turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang next to him. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he was instantly drowned in fear. He roared, "Father, mother, save me!" Qin Feiyang crossed his arms in front of his chest and did not stop him. He looked at Wang Feng with ridicule. That's right. This was the ancient castle's cultivation room. "Father, mother, did you hear that? Come and save me!" Wang Feng shouted desperately. However, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no response. "Have you shouted enough?" After a long time, Qin Feiyang spoke. Wang Feng glanced at the cultivation room and immediately ran to the stone door. However, the stone door was tightly closed. No matter how hard he tried, He could not break it open. Qin Feiyang simply sat at the desk and looked at Wang Feng with amusement. What do you want to do? Wang Feng turned around in despair and looked at Qin Feiyang in horror. Don't you want to chop me into pieces and feed me to the dogs? I'll give you this chance. Now I'm sitting here. Come, come, come. Try and see if you can do it. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips with a trace of playfulness. Wang Feng heard this, and the fear on his face became stronger. He could not figure out how Qin Feiyang sneaked into the city lord's mansion. He couldn't figure out how Qin Feiyang managed to enter his loft. One had to know, whether it was the city lord's mansion or his residence. They were all heavily guarded. Even a fly could not fly in. But this person could actually sneak into the attic. Could this person be a ghost? What? I don't dare. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Brother, no, my lord. Please have mercy, don't kill me. It's all my fault. I apologize to you. I apologize to you. Wang Feng quivered and immediately knelt on the ground, begging bitterly. Are you at fault? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. I was wrong. I shouldn't have provoked you. I was blind. My lord, I beg of you, please have mercy and let me go. I'm just a hedonistic scum. I'm not worth your time. Wang Feng cried out. He was extremely terrified. He even dared to rob the Su family so brazenly. What else did he not dare to do? Indeed, you are not worth my time, but your father is. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He stood up and waved his hand, sending Wang Feng to another cultivation room. Immediately, Qin Feiyang got up and left the castle. He once again appeared in the hall of the attic. He glanced around and then pushed open the door and walked out. The two guards at the door thought that Wang Feng had run out on his own. They were just trying to persuade him. But when they saw Qin Feiyang's face, they were stunned. Wasn't this the ruthless person who robbed the Su family? How could he come out from here? The two of them came back to their senses and hurriedly ran into the attic. Looking at the empty hall, they immediately realized that something was wrong. Qin Feiyang was still standing outside, admiring the scenery of the lake. The two of them immediately ran out and stared at Qin Feiyang and shouted, Where's the young master? Where did you take him? The two of them shouted and immediately alarmed the other guards not far away. They all turned their heads and looked over. Immediately, each and every one of them turned pale with fright. They immediately swarmed over and surrounded Qin Feiyang. The scenery here is really good. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Scenery. The group of guards' faces suddenly darkened. How could he still be in the mood to enjoy the scenery here? I'm asking you, where's the young master? The two guards shouted again. I don't know, he disappeared when I came. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Liar. The young master was still inside just now. The two of them shouted angrily. He must have been imprisoned by this person. If you don't believe me, search me. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Do you think we're stupid? How could such a big person be hiding on you? You must have a space divine object. Quickly call the young master out. The two guards couldn't help but have a murderous look in their eyes. Swish! Qin Feiyang turned to look at the two of them and narrowed his eyes. I advise you'd better put away your killing intent immediately. Their pupils shrank. Although they were in the perfection undead realm and Qin Feiyang was only in the half-step undead realm, they were still a little scared. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Let's go, take me to see the city lord. No, let him come to see me in person. After saying that, he took out a reclining chair and lay on it, drinking tea while squinting and basking in the sun, looking extremely comfortable. Looking at Qin Feiyang's actions, the group of guards were all dumbfounded. Did he treat this place as his own home? This was too arrogant. This was simply lawless. Why aren't you going? Qin Feiyang looked at the group of people, looking sleepy, which made the group of guards so angry that they were about to suffocate. They had never seen such an arrogant person. The two guards looked at the person opposite them and said in a deep voice, "Go and inform the city lord." Okay. The person nodded and immediately turned and ran away. Oh no, oh no. That ruthless person came to our city lord's mansion and is now lying in front of the young city lord's courtyard, drinking tea and basking in the sun soon. The news of Qin Feiyang's arrival spread like wildfire in the city lord's mansion. Regardless of whether it was the guards of the city lord's mansion or the servant maids, they all ran over. When they saw it, all of them were dumbstruck. Was he really drinking tea and basking in the sun? Wasn't this too leisurely? In the main hall. At this moment, Wang Hui was also somewhat anxious. It had been so long since dawn. Why hadn't he come yet? Could it be that he had received some news and did not dare to come? But that wasn't right. Zhuo Tianqing had come in secret. Other than him and his trusted aides, no one else knew. Besides, if this person really knew that he had found a savior behind his back, he would definitely use this control-type secret technique on him. What was going on? City Lord, suddenly. A shout sounded. Wang Hui raised his eyebrows, looked at the guard who ran into the main hall, and said angrily, "Didn't I say that no one is allowed to come over?" "Lord, quickly go to the young city lord." The guard was out of breath. "Feng." Wang Hui was startled and frowned. "What's wrong with him?" The guard took a deep breath and then said in one breath, "That ruthless person is now with the young city lord." Ruthless person? Wang Hui was stunned. The guard said, "It's the person who robbed the Su family." What? Wang Hui's expression suddenly changed. Why would he go there? Not good. He would definitely make a move on Feng. Wang Hui hurriedly looked at the void and called out, "Lord Zhua!" Zhuo Tianqing appeared and sneered. "I heard it all. This little bastard really dared to come to the city lord's mansion. How dare he? Lord, now is not the time to praise him. My son might have already been killed by him." Wang Hui was extremely anxious. Zhuo Tianqing glanced at Wang Hui, then looked at the guard and asked, "Then where is your young city lord?" "I didn't see him. He seems to have disappeared." The guard shook his head. Bastard, bastard. Hearing this, Wang Hui was immediately furious. "Take me there. I want to see what kind of ruthless person dares to be so arrogant." Zhuo Tianqing sneered. Good, good, good. Wang Hui nodded and immediately ran out of the hall. Buzz. But at this moment, the voice of the divine soundstone sounded. Zhuo Tianqing was stunned and took out the divine soundstone. Wang Hui also turned his head, suspiciously. A shadow appeared. It was a young man in his 20s. "Father, where are you?" The young man looked at Wang Hui and immediately asked, looking very anxious, "I'm dealing with something in Tianfeng City. What's wrong?" Zhuo Tianqing was suspicious. "My little sister has been kidnapped." The young man said, "What? Little Xian was kidnapped?" Hearing this, Zhuo Tianqing's expression changed instantly, and he roared, "Who kidnapped her? Did you catch them?" "No, but I heard from the guard that it was a man and a dog." The young man shook his head. "A man and a dog?" Zhuo Tianqing frowned. "And they seemed to be unfamiliar faces." The young man said again, "Unfamiliar faces." Zhuo Tianqing's eyes flashed coldly as he shouted, "Send someone to find them immediately. I'll be back later. You must find them, or I'll hold you responsible." "Yes." The young man responded respectfully, and the shadow quickly dissipated. "Damn it! How dare you provoke me?" Zhuo Tianqing, "No matter who you are, I won't let you go." Zhuo Tianqing's face was extremely gloomy. "Sir, what's going on? Someone dares to touch your daughter?" Wang Hui looked at Zhuo Tianqing in horror. Zhuo Tianqing said, "As the lord of a city, it's inevitable to have a few enemies." "That's true." Wang Hui nodded and asked carefully, "Then my place? Since you're here, you should first deal with your matter here." Anyway, it's just 2 ants. It won't take too long. Zhuo Tianqing's eyes were full of contempt. Thank you, sir. Please follow me. Wang Hui smiled gratefully and then rushed toward the lake with Zhuo Tianqing. When the two arrived above the lake and saw Qin Feiyang lying there leisurely, they were both angry and couldn't help but want to laugh. They really didn't know what to say when he dared to cause trouble in someone else's home. City Lord. A group of guards stepped forward and pointed at Qin Feiyang. They were all seething with anger. Qin Feiyang also looked at Wang Hui and Zhuo Tianqing at the same time. Weren't you waiting for me in the main hall? Why did you come here personally? I was just about to say that I'll see you after I wake up. Qin Feiyang looked at the two with a smile. Wake up? When the group heard this, they were instantly speechless. Did he really think the city lord's mansion was his home? That he could sleep whenever he wanted? Zhuo Tianqing looked at Qin Feiyang, and the contempt in his eyes deepened. He asked, Is it him? Yes, it's him. Wang Hui nodded. Kid, do you know what kind of place the city lord's mansion is? How dare you come here so brazenly? Zhuo Tianqing looked at Qin Feiyang with disdain. The city lord's mansion is the city lord's mansion. What else could it be? Qin Feiyang laughed. The city lord's mansion is the territory of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. You came to the city lord's mansion to cause trouble, which means you're going against the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Let's not talk nonsense. Kill yourself. Zhuo Tianqing looked at Qin Feiyang condescendingly and said in a commanding tone. Chapter 30-34. Suicide. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He retracted his gaze and said with a smile, Aren't you tired of standing up there and talking? Come down and chat while drinking tea. Who has time to chat with you? Killing intent surged in Zhuo Tianqing's eyes, and an aura rolled out. Don't say that. You really don't have time. Qin Feiyang chuckled. What do you mean? Zhuo Tianqing raised his eyebrows. I've calculated that something bad must have happened in your family, and you're in a hurry to go back and deal with it. Qin Feiyang said. Zhuo Tianqing's heart trembled when he heard this. Wang Hui's face was filled with bewilderment. How did this little bastard know? Qin Feiyang pretended to count his fingers and then smiled at Zhuo Tianqing. I've calculated again. It should be related to your daughter. Zhuo Tianqing's eyes burst with monstrous killing intent. Qin Feiyang ignored him and said with a smile, Do you have time to drink tea with me now? Wang Hui said in surprise, Lord Zhuo, what does he mean? Zhuo Tianqing was silent. He landed opposite Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, Don't implicate your wife and children. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He raised his head and looked at Zhuo Tianqing. He never expected this person to say such a thing. This sentence was indeed a famous saying, but in today's world, who could really do it? Just like the Blood Palace. If they followed this rule, why would they go all the way to Great Qin to snatch his beloved woman? Or the dragons? If she followed this rule, she wouldn't have used Yi Shui and old Master Yi to threaten his master, Yi Zhong. So, in today's world, these principles could only be said with words. Just like Zhuo Tianqing. If he had the chance to get close to the people around him, wouldn't he do this? Definitely. People's hearts were like this. When they did it themselves, they took it for granted. When it was someone else's turn, they would say something about it. Little did they know, this was just a kind of fear and a display of humility. Whatever you want to do, I can accompany you to the end, but only my daughter. If you dare to hurt her, I will never let you off. Seeing Qin Feiyang remain silent, Zhuo Tianqing enunciated every word with a gloomy expression. Wang Hui landed in front of Zhuo Tianqing and asked in shock, My lord, are you saying that he kidnapped your daughter? Do you really believe that he can predict the future? Zhuo Tianqing said angrily. Wang Hui's neck shrank as he was overwhelmed with shock. Where did this person come from? He actually dared to kidnap the most precious daughter of Wind Sea City's vice city, Lord Zhuotianqing? Wait a minute. Suddenly, Wang Hui realized something important. Qin Feiyong had clearly come prepared this time. Obviously, he already knew that Wang Hui was in the Castellan Manor. But how did he know? Qin Feiyong glanced at Wang Hui, then looked at Zhuotianqing and smiled. Don't be so nervous. Your daughter will be fine. Drink some tea. Qin Feiyong poured 2 cups of tea and pushed them in front of the two of them. The two of them looked at each other. Each took out a chair and sat across from Qin Feiyong. The group of guards looked at each other in dismay. How did they really start drinking? I like peace and quiet. Qin Feiyong chuckled. Zhuotianqing understood and looked at Wang Hui. Tell your men to scram immediately. Yes. Wang Hui hurriedly nodded, looked at the guards around him, and said, Hurry up and leave. The group of guards fled in fear. They had long wanted to leave, but they didn't dare. Drink, this is the best tea. Even if you are the city lord, you might not have tasted it before. Qin Feiyong laughed. The two of them looked at the teacup and did not drink. What is it? Are you afraid that I'll poison it? You are all Dominator Realm existences. Can poison you to death? Qin Feiyong sneered. That might not be the case. Zhuotianqing coldly snorted, looked at Wang Hui and said, You drink first. Wang Hui's expression suddenly panicked. Do you need me to say it again? Zhuotianqing's face immediately turned cold. Wang Hui's pupils contracted. He immediately grabbed the teacup, hesitated for a while, and finally gritted his teeth and drank it in one breath. What's going on? Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them suspiciously. Could there really be poison in the Tianyan realm that could poison Dominator Realm experts? In his opinion, Dominator Realm experts were definitely invulnerable to poison. But now it seemed that this was not the case. Otherwise, why would Zhuotianqing be so careful? Zhuotianqing kept staring at Wang Hui. After Wang Hui drank it, he closed his eyes and looked like he was waiting for death. But after a while, nothing happened. And after thinking about it, this tea was really good. Seeing this, only then did Zhuotianqing feel relieved. He put the teacup to his mouth and took a sip. His expression immediately froze. This taste could really be called the best tea. But now he was not in the mood to drink tea. He was worried about his daughter's safety. See, am I the kind of person who would poison tea? Poisoning tea is an act of blasphemy towards tea. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. The two of them were silent. Don't be stuffy. This heavenly deity dew is not something that ordinary people can taste. Come, try it again. Qin Feiyong poured another cup for the two of them. Zhuotianqing couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyong and ask, What do you want to do? Shouldn't I be asking you this? Why did you come all the way to Tianfeng City? Qin Feiyong laughed. Tianfeng City is under the jurisdiction of Cloud Sea City. Can't I come to take a look? Zhuotianqing said. Qin Feiyong laughed and said, Of course, that's not a problem, but is it really like this? Zhuotianqing was shocked. Why did he feel that this guy had already seen through his purpose of coming to Tianfeng City? Wind Sea City, Vice City Lord. To be honest, we have no enmity between us. Why do you have to come to kill me? If you didn't come to kill me, then your daughter wouldn't have been taken away. Does this count as you asking for it? Qin Feiyong said lightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Zhuotianqing shook his head, but his heart was extremely flustered. He sent a voice transmission. Wang Hui, how did he know? I don't know either. Wang Hui replied inwardly. His mind was also in a mess right now. And you, Wang Hui, I told you to do your job well, so can't you do it well? Why do you have to play such tricks? Look, now your son is gone. If anything happens to him, who's going to send you off in the future? Qin Feiyong shook his head and sighed. Wang Hui heard this and became more and more frightened. He really knew everything. Could it be that this person had been watching him? But that was impossible. After returning to Tianfeng City, he was extremely careful. Every once in a while, he would use his divine sense to scan the surroundings. But he didn't find anything like a spatial divine item. Zhuo Tianqing said in a deep voice, "If you came to Tianfeng City because of me, then I can leave immediately. Leave now, and then wait for your daughter to come back and deal with me? Do you think I'm that stupid?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "Then what do you want?" Zhuo Tianqing said angrily. "It's very simple. Come under my command. As long as you and I become a family, then I naturally won't hurt your daughter." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. "You?" Zhuo Tianqing looked at Qin Feiyang in shock and anger. He never thought that this person's ambition was so big that he actually wanted to make him submit. Wang Hui was also quite shocked. Controlling him wasn't enough. Now he wanted to control Zhuo Tianqing. Who was Zhuo Tianqing? Greater Mastery, Sovereign Realm, and the Vice City Lord of Wind Sea City. Even in the entire Eastern continent, he was one of the top figures. Making such a powerhouse submit, aren't you afraid that your stomach will explode? Don't talk to me about identity and strength. It's useless to me. I'll give you 100 breaths to think about it. Don't blame me for being unkind, because you provoked me first. I'm already very merciful to let you live," Qin Feiyang said lightly. Zhuo Tianqing was about to use his identity to deter Qin Feiyang, but when he heard Qin Feiyang's words, he took it back. It was obvious that this person was fearless. Even if he used the name of God, he wouldn't be scared. "Hurry up and think about it." Qin Feiyang faintly smiled and continued to drink his tea. Zhuo Tianqing's expression was uncertain. From the bottom of his heart, not to mention a mere half-step eternal realm, he wouldn't even be willing to submit to someone stronger than him. But what about his daughter? Leave her to die? He couldn't do it. His daughter was his flesh and blood, and he couldn't be cruel enough to give her up. "Sir, if the child is gone, you can have another one. But if you lose your freedom, everything will be over. Let's talk about it later. If you really submit to him and let the big shots of the Alliance know, they won't let you go," Wang Hui said, telepathically. "Shut up. Isn't this all because of you?" Zhuo Tianqing was furious and really wanted to strangle this person. Wang Hui shrank his neck and lowered his head, not daring to say anything, because he was very familiar with Zhuo Tianqing, who was also a ruthless person. If he angered him, he would really kill him. Time passed breath by breath. Zhuo Tianqing's eyes flashed. He nodded and said, "Okay, I'll follow you." "Great." Qin Feiyang laughed and formed a seal with both hands. A slave seal immediately appeared. "Wait, I want to see my daughter first," Zhuo Tianqing hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang said, "You'll see her after you control her." "No. I don't know whether my daughter is in your hands or not," Zhuo Tianqing said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and condensed the figures of the madman and the white-eyed wolf. Of course, they had changed their faces. He said with a smile, "Then you can ask your family if they are the ones who kidnapped your daughter." Zhuo Tianqing glanced at the figures of the madman and the white-eyed wolf and immediately took out the voice transmission stone. Soon, the figure of a young man appeared. Zhuo Tianqing pointed at the two figures and said, "Look, are they the ones who kidnapped your sister?" Yes, it's them." The young man nodded and said, "Father, I don't think I told you what they looked like. How did you know?" Zhuo Tianqing's face sank. He didn't answer and directly turned off the voice transmission stone. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, "So you have a son?" "You," Zhuo Tianqing immediately glared at Qin Feiyang. As long as one wasn't a fool, one could understand the meaning of these words. If he didn't submit today, not only his daughter, but even his son would be killed. Chapter 30-35. Hurry up, my patience is limited. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Zhuo Tianqing's face was gloomy and uncertain. After a long while, he sighed helplessly and nodded. "All right, I submit." After saying that, he closed his eyes and gave up resisting. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the enslavement seal immediately turned into a ray of light, disappearing into the top of Zhuo Tianqing's head. But at this moment, Zhuo Tianqing suddenly opened his eyes, and two cold lights burst out of his eyes as he roared. "As long as I capture you, I will naturally be able to save my daughter from your accomplices." "This is bad." Qin Feiyang's expression changed. This person was pretending to submit, preparing to resist at the critical moment, causing fatal damage to his soul. Following Zhuo Tianqing's resistance, the enslavement seal immediately shattered, and a tearing pain immediately spread out in his mind. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but let out a painful howl. His consciousness also fell into darkness. "You're still too inexperienced to fight with me." Zhuo Tianqing sneered, stood up and grabbed towards Qin Feiyang. In the nick of time, Qin Feiyang bit his tongue hard, and his consciousness became much clearer. Following closely, with a thought, he instantly disappeared without a trace. Zhuo Tianqing was shocked. He immediately released his spiritual sense and scanned his surroundings. He immediately discovered the Black Tortoise Realm. However, he didn't know that this was an independent world. He only thought that it was a spatial divine object. This sudden turn of events caused Wang Hui to be extremely shocked. He didn't expect that Zhuo Tianqing was actually pretending to be controlled. He also didn't expect that Qin Feiyang's reaction would be so fast, and he would directly hide in the spatial divine object. Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang appeared in front of the ancient castle, and his entire body immediately fell to the ground. With his last bit of strength, he roared, "Dan Wankai!" After obtaining the Ice Phoenix Flame and the Twin Dragon Cauldron, Dan Wankai moved to the cultivation room next door, which became his exclusive alchemy room. Soon, Dan Wankai ran in. When he saw Qin Feiyang's condition, his face immediately changed. "Quick, inform the madman and the white-eyed wolf not to go to the city lord's mansion. Also, find the fire lotus and bring her here. Use the Black Tortoise Realm and leave the city lord's mansion," Qin Feiyang said weakly. Then he fell to the ground and fainted. Dan Wankai immediately took out a voice transmission stone and sent a message to the mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf. Qin Feiyang had already distributed the divine sound transmission stone he had bought from the demonic tower to everyone. Everyone in the Devil's Land had it. Above a mountain range, the white-eyed wolf and madman were activating altars and rushing towards Wind City. Madman was holding an unconscious woman in his arms. The woman was about 20 years old. She had a petite figure and wore a long purple dress. She looked extremely alluring. That woman was none other than Zhuo Shaoxian. Suddenly, the white-eyed wolf stopped. Suspicion flashed in his eyes. He took out a voice transmission stone and inserted his divine sense into it. A message appeared in his mind. "Who is it?" Madman asked. "Dan Wankai." The white-eyed wolf withdrew his divine sense and frowned. Madman was stunned. Why did Dan Wankai send them a message? The white-eyed wolf's mind moved, and Dan Wankai's figure appeared. He immediately said, "Young master told you not to go to the city lord's mansion." Why? The mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf were surprised. "See for yourself." Dan Wankai turned on the divine sound transmission stone. Qin Feiyang, who was lying unconscious on the ground, immediately entered the vision of the man and the wolf. What's going on? The mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf were shocked. Dan Wankai shook his head and said, "I was focused on refining pills just now and didn't pay much attention to what happened outside. Seems like it has something to do with Zhuo Tianqing." The mad scientist's eyes dimmed. Dan Wonkai noticed the woman in the mad scientist's arms and asked suspiciously, "Who is she?" "She's called Zhuo Shaoxian, Zhuo Tianqing's daughter," the mad scientist said. Dan Wonkai was confused. "Then why are you holding her in your arms? Aren't you from the Blood Demon Tower?" The Blood Demon Tower ran to the land of Source a long time ago. The mad scientist shook his head. "Is that so?" Dan Wonkai nodded and said, "Find a place to hide first. Don't rush to the city, Lord's mansion." After that, Dan Wonkai turned off the divine sound transmission stone and sent a message to Fire Lotus. After hearing this, Fire Lotus immediately woke up from her seclusion and came to the castle. Looking at Qin Feiyang lying on the ground, she asked, "How's the situation?" "His soul vessel is shattered, but I've already given him a divine sun pill and he's slowly recovering. His life shouldn't be in any danger." Dan Wonkai said, "The divine sun pill is a pill used to repair the soul vessel in the sky cloud realm." "What happened? How did his soul vessel shatter?" Fire Lotus frowned. Ever since she handed over the affairs of the Black Tortoise realm to the big black wolf, the 3 black leopard brothers, and Pai Lupi, she had been in seclusion, so she didn't know anything about Zhuo Tianqing. "I'm not sure about the details. Now is not the time to discuss this. The young master wants you to control the Black Tortoise realm and leave the city, Lord's mansion." Dan Wonkai said. "City, Lord's mansion?" Fire Lotus was slightly stunned. With a wave of her hand, an image appeared in the void. Zhuo Tianqing and Wang Hui also appeared in the image. The 2 of them were standing outside, their divine sense locked onto the Black Tortoise realm. Wang Hui said anxiously, "Sir, what should we do?" "Don't panic." Zhuo Tianqing waved his hand and pondered for a while. With a clang, a long black blade appeared. "A divine artifact." Wang Hui's eyes lit up. "That's right. Zhuo Tianqing had a high-grade divine artifact. Wasn't it more than enough to break open a divine artifact?" Zhuo Tianqing grabbed the long black blade and slashed at the Black Tortoise realm. "Not good." Dan Wonksai's expression changed when he saw this. "Don't panic. The seal on the ancient castle has been lifted, not to mention a mere divine artifact. Even a sovereign divine artifact, or someone like Old Hai who controls the law of space, can't break in." Fire Lotus smiled confidently. Back in the Great Qin Empire, Old Hai was able to use the law of space to enter the Black Tortoise realm purely because he was unprepared. Now that he was prepared, it was naturally different. For example, last time in the Heavenly Cloud Ocean, Old Hai wanted to enter the Black Tortoise realm, but was forcefully blocked by the ancient castle. "I see." Dan Wonkai breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. As expected, when the long black blade slashed at the Black Tortoise realm, there was no reaction at all. "What's going on?" Zhuo Tianqing was dumbfounded. Wang Hui's face was also filled with shock. What level of divine artifact was this divine artifact that even a high-grade divine artifact couldn't break it? It was also at this moment. Fire Lotus controlled the Black Tortoise realm and suddenly rushed into the sky. "Sir, it's trying to escape." Wang Hui roared. "It's fine, let it escape. Wait until it leaves the city. Then I can use my full strength." Zhuo Tianqing secretly sneered. Wang Hui was stunned when he heard this. That's right. The long black blade from before had not recovered. In other words, this high-grade divine artifact had not yet displayed its full strength. Zhuo Tianqing should be worried about the people of Tianfeng City, so he did not use his full strength. Whoosh! As the Black Tortoise realm left, Zhuo Tianqing immediately waved his hand, swept up Wang Hui, and chased after the Black Tortoise realm. One after the other, they quickly flew out of Tianfeng City. "Look, it's the city lord. Who's the person next to him? Why does he look a little familiar? Wait, he seems to be the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City, Zhuo Tianqing. That's right, it's him. Back then, when I went to Wind Sea City to play, I was fortunate enough to see his heroic appearance. Such a big shot. Why would he come to our Tianfeng city? Look, their expressions don't seem right. Could it be that something big happened again? Many people only saw Zhuo Tianqing and Wang Hui, but not the Black Tortoise realm, so they were all puzzled. However, the news from the city, Lord's mansion, also spread out very quickly. What? They actually ran into the city, Lord's mansion, so brazenly again. This is simply lawless. Could it be that the city lord and Zhuo Tianqing's expressions are so gloomy? Everyone was in disbelief. Mo Lu, Li Yunxia stood in front of the window, watching Wang Hui and Zhuo Tianqing disappear outside the city, her brows tightly knitted together. She naturally recognized Zhuo Tianqing at a glance. She did not expect that Zhuo Tianqing would actually be in Tianfeng City. This time, she roughly understood why Qin Feiyang wanted to inquire about Zhuo Tianqing's situation. Tower Lord, according to the rumors outside, those two ruthless people broke into the city lord's mansion and kidnapped Wang Hui-san. A guard of Mo Lu walked into the study and said while looking at Li Yunxia's back. I know. Li Yunxia nodded. The guard turned around and left. Li Yunxia pondered for a moment and took out the sound transmission godstone. Buzz. Very quickly, Chu Yun's figure appeared. Greetings, Miss Yun. Li Yunxia bowed respectfully. What's wrong? Chu Yun was puzzled. Li Yunxia rubbed her forehead and said, This Qin Feiyang and madman have caused a huge commotion in Tianfeng City again. What is it? Chu Yun was curious. They broke into the city lord's mansion and kidnapped Wang Hui-san. They seemed to have offended Zhuo Tianqing. Li Yunxia was helpless. Couldn't they stop? Zhuo Tianqing? Chu Yun was slightly stunned and asked, Are you talking about the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City? Yes. Li Yunxia nodded. They are indeed some troublemakers. They even dare to provoke such a person. Chu Yun shook her head and smiled bitterly. Li Yunxia asked, Miss, do we care about this matter? Care? Why should we care? These years, the people of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance have become more and more arrogant. I have long wanted to kill their spirit. Since this Qin Feiyang has bumped into them, then let them have some fun. Chu Yun smiled. But the Rogue Cultivator Alliance is so strong. Is Qin Feiyang their match? Li Yunxia was a little worried. Don't underestimate this Qin Feiyang. His strength is not as simple as you think. In short, we just have to wait and watch the show. In addition, tell all the nearby demon towers not to interfere. This is a personal grudge between Qin Feiyang and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. It has nothing to do with our demon palace. After Chu Yun gave her instructions, the phantom image dissipated. Li Yunxia put away the divine sound transmission stone and looked out of the window with a trace of shock. Don't underestimate Qin Feiyang. Wait and watch the show. He never thought that Miss Chu Yun would actually say such words. Others might not know Chu Yun's identity in the Demon Palace, but as the Tower Master of the Demon Tower, she was quite clear. To be able to make Chu Yun say such words, she was definitely not an ordinary person. But what was the background of Qin Feiyang? Why had she never heard of him before? Chapter 3036. Outside the city, with the Black Tortoise world in front, Zhuo Tianqing and Wang Hui went deeper and deeper into the mountains. Zhuo Tianqing's aura was too strong, causing the beasts in the mountains to flee in all directions. About half an hour later, no one knew how far they had gone into the mountains. Suddenly, Zhuo Tianqing waved his hand, and a surge of divine power appeared and shrouded the Black Tortoise world. The Black Tortoise world was immediately trapped in the void. Fire Lotus frowned. Don't worry about them. Qin Feiyang's voice suddenly sounded. Huolian was overjoyed. She quickly turned around and saw that Qin Feiyang had already stood up and was standing behind her. "Thank you for your hard work." Qin Feiyang smiled. "It's fine." Fire Lotus shook her head and looked at Qin Feiyang worriedly. "But you? I'm fine too." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "However, this lesson has taught us that we shouldn't easily control people with higher cultivation than us in the future." "Who do you want to control? What's going on?" Fire Lotus was suspicious. "It's that Zhuo Tiansheng." Qin Feiyang pointed at Zhuo Tiansheng on the screen and briefly explained the situation. "So that's how it is." Fire Lotus suddenly understood. "You have nowhere to go now. Come out immediately if you know what's good for you. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless and destroying your spatial divine item." At this time, Zhuo Tiansheng's voice sounded outside. "If you have the ability, then destroy it." Qin Feiyang's voice sounded with a trace of disdain. "You still dare to be arrogant?" Zhuo Tiansheng was furious, and the black blade in his hand suddenly released a monstrous divine power. The surrounding mountains and rivers suddenly began to collapse and sink, as if the end of the world had arrived. "Shatter for me!" With a roar, Zhuo Tiansheng slashed at the black tortoise world, and the terrifying sharpness was earth-shattering. However, when the black blade slashed at the black tortoise world, it didn't have any effect at all. Instead, the ground below was split open and a huge abyss crack was formed. How is this possible? Not only Zhuo Tiansheng, but Wang Hui was also dumbfounded. Even a fully awakened, high-grade, heaven-defined divine artifact was unable to break open this spatial divine artifact? Whoosh! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang appeared in the void ahead. He looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and said, "You should know the consequences of your actions. You're courting death." Zhuo Tiansheng immediately released his pressure and rushed towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang disappeared again. "Damn it! Are you a tortoise? Come out and fight if you have the guts!" Zhuo Tiansheng roared. Whoosh! Before he finished speaking, a young man suddenly appeared in the void. "Fenger!" When Wang Hui saw the young man, he immediately rushed forward and held him in his arms. However, he found that he was no longer breathing. Between Wang Feng's eyebrows, there was a bloody hole. Blood was gushing out, and Wang Feng's face was instantly dyed red. "Bastard! Bastard! Get the hell out here! I'm going to tear you to shreds!" Wang Hui hugged the corpse tightly and roared into the void like an enraged beast. "I've already given you a chance. It's you who didn't cherish it. You go too." Qin Feiyang's voice echoed in the void. The next moment, Wang Hui suddenly screamed in pain, and then his whole body fell straight to the ground. Zhuo Tiansheng was shocked. He quickly released his divine sense to check and found that Wang Hui's divine soul had been annihilated. What was going on? Could it be that this kind of control secret technique could directly erase the divine soul? Thinking of this, his back couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he wasn't controlled by this person before. Otherwise, he would definitely end up like Wang Hui. "Zhuo Tiansheng, you also go and collect your daughter's body." Qin Feiyang's voice sounded again. "You!" Zhuo Tiansheng glared at the void. "Originally, as long as you followed me honestly, nothing would have happened. But you had to play tricks with me. Then I'm sorry, I can only be a cold-blooded person," Qin Feiyang said lightly. Fortunately, this time the backlash only shattered his divine soul. Otherwise, even with the divine sun spirit pill, he couldn't save him. Zhuo Tiansheng was burning with anxiety. If even Wang Hui and his son were killed, then it definitely wasn't to scare him. But if he couldn't break this space divine item, what could he do? "Let's talk things over. Other than being controlled, I can agree to any request you have, but please let my daughter go." He gritted his teeth and looked at the void and roared. "There's no other request. You must submit. This is your last chance. Your daughter's life and the lives of your Zhua family are now in your hands. Qin Feiyang said. Don't go too far, Zhua Tianqing roared. From his tone, it seemed that he wanted to exterminate the Zhua family. 3. However, the only reply he got was a cold and indifferent voice, like a death sentence. 2. The voice sounded again with a ruthless coldness. 1. As the word sounded, Zhua Tianqing's body suddenly trembled because he felt a terrifying killing intent in the word. Kill, kill. At most, I'll have another child in the future. But offending me means offending the entire Rogue Cultivator Alliance. From now on, there will be no place for you in the Eastern Continent. Zhua Tianqing roared hysterically, the Black Tortoise World, looking at the crazy Zhua Tianqing. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. It seems that this person doesn't care about his daughter that much. Fire Lotus muttered. Then what do we do now? Do we really kill Zhua Shaoxian? Dan Wangkai asked. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, then looked at Fire Lotus and said, Go find the ancestor and ask him to bring the madman and the white-eyed wolf in. Qin Batian controlled the space-time laws. As long as the ancient castle didn't interfere, he could enter and exit the Black Tortoise World at will. Qin Batian was not an outsider, so the ancient castle naturally wouldn't interfere. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded and walked to the side yard. A while later, Fire Lotus contacted the madman and the white-eyed wolf and learned their coordinates. Qin Batian immediately opened the space-time passage and brought them to the Black Tortoise World. Is this Zhua Shaoxian? Qin Feiyang asked as he looked at the woman in Madman's embrace. Yes. The madman nodded. The woman looked sweet and her skin was fragile. However, there was a big bump on the back of her head. Obviously, the madman and the white-eyed wolf had knocked her out. After knowing that Qin Feiyang was unconscious, the madman and the white-eyed wolf were furious. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, then left the Black Tortoise World with Zhua Shaoxian in his arms and appeared in front of Zhua Tianqing. Xian Looking at the unconscious Zhua Shaoxian, Zhua Tianqing's eyes trembled. He said in surprise, Why is she in your spatial divine item? He always thought that his daughter was still outside, because from the beginning to the end, he didn't see Qin Feiyang's companions come. However, his daughter was brought out of the spatial divine item by this person. Do you still need to ask? As the city lord of Wind Sea City, how could you not know that there is something called the space-time law in this world? Qin Feiyang said. What? You have mastered the space-time law. Zhua Tianqing was surprised. Don't worry about that. I'll ask you one last time. Do you really not care about her life or death? Qin Feiyang asked. Zhua Tianqing was struggling in his heart. When he saw his daughter with his own eyes, he couldn't say such cruel words. How about this? I'll take a step back and give you something in exchange. Qin Feiyang said. What is it? Zhua Tianqing frowned. 1,000 Dragon Phoenix Divine Pills, 1,000 Shangqing Fortune Pills, 3 level 8 Divine Pill Fires, 3 level 9 Divine Pill Fires, and a level 10 Divine Pill Furnace. Qin Feiyang said. What? So much? Zhua Tianqing was dumbfounded. Even as the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City, he couldn't find so many things in such a short time, especially the pill fires and pill furnaces. Anything above level 8 was a rare treasure that was hard to find. Qin Feiyang said calmly, It's okay. I don't have much, but I have the most time. Take your time and I'll wait. Okay, I promise you. But you must ensure Xiaoxian's safety. Zhua Tianqing gritted his teeth and stared at Qin Feiyang. Of course. After all, she's my money tree now. How can I hurt her? Qin Feiyang chuckled. Then when I find these things, how can I contact you? Zhua Tianqing asked. Qin Feiyang took out the Divine Voice Stone. Zhua Tianqing understood and also took out the Divine Voice Stone. After the two established the contract bridge, Qin Feiyang took Zhuo Xiaoxian and went straight into the Black Tortoise realm. Zhuo Tianqing glanced at the void with a grim expression, then opened an altar and left. He came to Wine City this time, thinking that he could get the high-grade divine weapon in this person's hands. But he didn't expect that he would lose his daughter. That's right. He came to help Wang Hui purely because of the divine weapon in Qin Feiyang's hands. In his opinion, this was also a matter that could be easily accomplished. But he never thought that the other party would be so difficult to deal with. Not only did he not succeed, but he also fell into such a difficult situation. If he had another choice, he wouldn't dare to provoke Qin Feiyang even if he was beaten to death. So powerful, even Zhuo Tianqing can't do anything to him. On a nearby mountain peak, two figures stood side by side at the edge of the cliff, looking at the leaving Zhuo Tianqing with eyes full of shock. The two were the Su family's patriarch and the Su family's old ancestor. They followed all the way here, thinking that they could take advantage of the situation or help to build a relationship with Zhuo Tianqing. After all, he was the deputy city, lord of Winxi City, who didn't want to curry favor with him. But when they arrived here and saw that even Zhuo Tianqing couldn't break the other party's spatial divine object, they didn't dare to show their faces, because they were afraid of being targeted by Qin Feiyang again. Even Zhuo Tianqing couldn't do anything to him. If the other party targeted their Su family, then it would be a disaster. Old ancestor, I'm really unwilling. The Su family's patriarch withdrew his gaze and said bitterly, So what if you're unwilling? You and I both know Zhuo Tianqing's status and strength. He even dared to kidnap his daughter, let alone our Su family. We can't afford to offend him. The Su family's old ancestor sighed. But the Su family's patriarch frowned. I know what you're going to say, but let this matter pass. As for the lost treasures, they're all worldly possessions. We can slowly earn them back in the future. The Su family's old ancestor said. Yes, the Su family's patriarch nodded, but his eyes were still filled with a cold light. Then let's go back. The Su family's old ancestor waved his hand and opened an altar. The Su family's patriarch's eyes flashed slightly. Looking at the Su family's old ancestor, he smiled and said, You go back first. I'll take care of something. What is it? The Su family's old ancestor frowned. The Su family's patriarch said, Don't worry, I won't provoke them again. It's best if that's the case. The Su family's old ancestor nodded and left alone. Looking at the back of the Su family's old ancestor, the Su family's patriarch couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. After the Su family's old ancestor left, the Su family's patriarch raised his head and looked at the place where Qin Feiyang was. The coldness in his eyes was not concealed as he sneered and said, Proud of yourself. I'll see how long you can be proud of yourself. After saying that, he also opened an altar and quickly left. Chapter 3037. The Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang returned the unconscious Zhuo Xiaoxian to Frenzy. Why are you giving her to me? Frenzy was stunned. You caught her. Who else should I give her to? Qin Feiyang smiled. Isn't that what you want? Frenzy raised his eyebrows. Is that what I want? It's obviously the white-eyed wolf's idea. No matter whose idea it is, you're the one who caught her. You're responsible for taking care of her. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he turned around and walked toward the attic. I'm only responsible for digging a hole. I don't care about burying it. The white-eyed wolf chuckled and disappeared in a flash. You guys, looking at Zhuo Xiaoxian in his arms, Frenzy's face was full of anger. He had no choice but to carry Zhuo Xiaoxian and walk toward his own attic. He had long since had his own courtyard here. Winxi City. This was a gigantic city that was dozens of times larger than Win City. The degree of prosperity was naturally not something that Wind City could compare to. But at this moment, Wind Sea City was in chaos. The various commanders of the City Lord Mansion led the guards and completely sealed off the city. The people who entered and left had to be interrogated. What's going on? All the major city gates have been sealed off. Many people who entered the city were puzzled. You still don't know. The daughter of the vice city lord, Zhuo Shaoxian, was kidnapped by a man and a dog. What? This Zhuo Shaoxian is the vice city lord's favorite. Although the vice city lord has more than a dozen children, he only has one daughter. To him, she's his treasure. Someone actually dares to have designs on her. Isn't this courting death? Isn't that right? However, this man and dog are quite capable. Until now, the City Lord Mansions, people haven't found them. Everyone was discussing. On both sides of the city gate, there were wanted posters for Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf. But it wasn't their real faces. The City Lord Mansion. In a large hall, Zhuo Tianqing sat at the top of the hall, looking extremely gloomy. Below, 2 guards in golden armor, a stooped, red-haired old man, and a dozen young men were standing below, trembling with fear. How long has it been since I left? How could you let Xiao Xian be kidnapped? Shouted Zhuo Tianqing. No one dared to make a sound. You! Zhuo Tianqing looked at the 2 golden-armored guards. My lord, we are guilty. The 2 of them hurriedly knelt on the ground, their faces full of fear. 2 imperishable stage experts at the Great Perfection stage can't even protect the young Mississippi. What's the point of me keeping you? Zhuo Tianqing waved his hand, and a burst of divine power rushed toward the 2. Sir, please spare my life. The 2 of them roared in horror. However, Zhuo Tianqing did not show any mercy and directly killed the 2 of them. The young men could not help but feel terrified after seeing this. Zhuo Tianqing looked at the dozen or so youths and shouted, "Scram!" Yes, the youths hurriedly bowed and retreated. They were Zhuo Tianqing's children. He was Zhuo Tianqing's biological son. Even if he was Zhuo Tianqing's biological son, he wouldn't dare to act rashly in front of him. After retreating from the hall, the dozen or so youths returned to normal. All of them were arrogant and looked down on everyone, showing the virtues of a hedonistic son. Do you think Xiao Xian will die in the hands of that man and dog? One of the youths asked telepathically. Isn't that better? That's right. In father's eyes, she's the most precious daughter. No matter what good thing he has, the first thing he thinks of is her. If it weren't for father's protection, I would have dealt with her long ago. Then it seems like it's a good thing for us. Of course it's a good thing. If she dies outside, father will naturally start to value us. In the future, won't we be able to get whatever we want? Haha, the group was not worried at all. Instead, they laughed in their hearts. This was the kinship of a rich family. In front of benefits, it was worthless. There was only scheming and fighting for favor and power. Inside the hall, only the red-haired elder was still there. Zhuo Tianqing sighed and looked at the red-haired elder. Elder you're the person I trust the most. There's something I need you to help me with. Sir, please speak, the red-haired elder said. I already know who kidnapped Xiao Xian, and I've already met him. But he gave me a condition. Zhuo Tianqing explained the situation in a simple and clear manner. I see. I was wondering why we couldn't find them. It turns out that they have mastered the space-time laws. The red-haired elder nodded in realization. The most difficult thing to deal with is that they have a spatial divine item that even the black dragon crescent blade can't break. Zhuo Tianqing sighed. If we really want to save Xiao Xian, then we really have to listen to him. The red-haired elder said. The prime clear creation pill and dragon phoenix divine pill are not a problem. Our city lord residence has stored a lot of them over the years. But 3 level 8 divine pill fires 3 level 9 divine pill fires, and a level 10 divine pill furnace. Where can I find them? I'm afraid even Mo, Lu can't take out so many at once, especially a level 10 divine pill furnace. It's already the best pill furnace. Such pill furnaces are basically in the hands of those alchemy masters. Should we ask them for them? Impossible. Those are their lifeblood. No matter how much benefits they give, they won't give it to me. As for Mo Lu, I'm afraid they don't have it either. Even if they do, they won't sell it to us from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Tell me, what can I do? Zhuo Tiansheng rubbed his forehead with a frustrated expression. This is indeed a difficult problem. Elder Yu nodded. How about this? You know quite a few alchemy masters. Why don't you ask them first and see what they think? Zhuo Tiansheng looked at Elder Yu expectantly. There's no need to ask. None of the alchemy masters I know has a level 10 divine pill furnace. The highest is level 9. For such a pill furnace, other than the Demon Hall, I'm afraid we can only look for the Deputy Alliance leader of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, because he has a 10th level divine grade pill furnace in his hands. Elder Yu said, Look for him? I don't dare. Zhuo Hansheng hurriedly shook his head, his face full of fear. Indeed, against an expert like him, let alone Xiao Xian, even you are just a small chess piece. Elder Yu shook his head and sighed. What should we do? Zhuo Tianqing was extremely frustrated. Da-da! Suddenly, accompanied by a series of hurried footsteps, a guard ran out of the hall and said respectfully, Sir, someone requests to see you. I'm not free, Zhuo Tianqing shouted. The guard shrank his neck and said, This person said that he has a way to deal with the person who kidnapped Mississippi. What? Zhuo Tianqing suddenly stood up and looked at Elder Yu. He hurriedly said, Quickly invite him in. Yes. The guard turned and ran back. Zhuo Tianqing walked to the entrance of the hall and looked outside. Elder Yu, who do you think this person is? No matter who he is, as long as he can help save Xiao Xian, he will be our benefactor. Elder Yu smiled. Yes. If he can really help us save Xiao Xian, I will definitely reward him handsomely. After saying that, Zhuo Tianqing waited anxiously. Soon, the guard walked over with a middle-aged man. Sir, it's him. The guard pointed at the middle-aged man and said. Zhuo Tianqing sized up the middle-aged man in front of him and waved to the guard. You can leave first. The guard turned and left. Please come in. Zhuo Tianqing warmly greeted the middle-aged man and entered the hall. He smiled and said, May I ask your name? Sir is too polite. I'm just the patriarch of a small family in Tianfeng City. The middle-aged man hurriedly waved his hand. Tianfeng City? Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu looked at each other, and their attitude was even more enthusiastic. People from Tianfeng City must have contact with that person. Maybe there really is a way. Su Yuan greets Sir. The middle-aged man bowed. No need to be polite, no need to be polite. Brother Su, please sit down. Zhuo Tianqing asked Su Yuan to sit on a chair and couldn't wait to ask, Brother Su, do you really have a way to deal with this person? Su Yuan nodded, and a look of resentment flashed in his eyes. He said, Sir, this person also has a blood feud with me. What do you mean? Zhuo Tianqing was taken aback and asked suspiciously, This person not only looted my family's treasury, but also took away all the spirit vein and crystal vein, leaving nothing for us. Sir also knows that crystal vein and spirit vein are the foundation of a family's foothold. Isn't he breaking the lifeline of my Su family by doing this? Su Yuan said angrily. And Zhuo Tianqing looked at Su Yuan in a daze and frowned. You wouldn't be a member of Tianfeng City's Su family, right? Exactly. I'm the patriarch of the Su family. Su Yuan nodded. I heard Wang Hui talk about your Su family, but I didn't expect Brother Su to be the patriarch of the Su family. Zhuo Tianqing smiled. As the deputy city lord of Win Sea City, of course, it was impossible to know a small patriarch. Olji said, Brother Su, tell me how to deal with him. It's very difficult to deal with him, but we can also start with the people around him like him. Su Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Who is around him? Zhuo Tianqing asked hurriedly. Su Yuan waved his hand, and with the surge of divine power, 2 figures of a man and a woman appeared. If Qin Feiyang was here, he would recognize at a glance that this man and woman were Yun Ziang and the lord of Tianyue Building. They are? Zhuo Tianqing was suspicious. This man, I don't know, because it was also the first time I saw him in Tianfeng City. But this woman, I am very familiar with her. She is the lord of Tianyue Building, a prostitute. They seem to have a close relationship with this person, and according to my speculation, they shouldn't be with this person. If Sir can find them, you can use them to threaten this person. Su Yuan sneered. Then where are they now? Zhuo Tianqing hurriedly said. I don't know, but I believe that with the power in your hands, it shouldn't be difficult to find them. Su Yuan said. Zhuo Tianqing pondered for a while and looked at old Yu. Then I'll leave this matter to you. Okay. This old man will immediately contact the city lords of all the cities in the eastern continent and ask them to help pay attention. After old Yu finished speaking, he turned and left quickly. Chapter 3038. After Elder Yu left, Zhuo Tianqing looked at Su Yuan and smiled. Brother Su, if this method really works, your Su family will come to my Win Sea City to develop in the future. Su Yuan was overjoyed. As one of the largest cities in the eastern continent, the Win Sea City was naturally not something a small city like the Wind City could compare to. To be able to enter the Wind Sea City to develop, the Su family would instantly rise. This was truly an unexpected surprise. Most importantly, in the future, he would be able to rely on the care of this vice city lord. At that time, even if he moved to the Wind Sea City, he would be able to do so smoothly. He really did not expect to have such a huge gain, because he came to find Zhuo Tianqing purely to take revenge on Qin Feiyang and curry favor with Zhuo Tianqing. But he never thought that Zhuo Tianqing would be so generous to let his Su family develop here. It seemed that the rise of his Su family was just around the corner. However, just as Su Yuan's imagination was running wild, Zhuo Tianqing's gaze suddenly turned cold and said, But if this method doesn't work, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Heard of it, Su Yuan's gaze trembled, and he immediately smiled flatteringly. It will definitely work. It will definitely work. Black Tortoise Realm. The next day, Zhuo Shaoxian woke up from her coma. Looking at the unfamiliar room and lying on an unfamiliar bed, she immediately shivered and quickly looked at the clothes on her body. Seeing that her clothes were intact, she heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she looked around suspiciously. What was this place? Dada! Madman walked into the room. Who are you? Zhuo Shaoxian's face immediately turned pale. She quickly got up and ran to the other side of the bed, looking at Madman warily. Because Madman had already recovered his true appearance, Zhuo Shaoxian did not recognize him at all. How troublesome! Madman raised his eyebrows, took a step forward, and slapped the back of Zhuo Shaoxian's head. Don't hit me! Zhuo Shaoxian hurriedly grabbed the blanket and crawled under it, curling up. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. He lifted the blanket and said, You are my prisoner now. Whether I hate you or not, is it up to you? You are the person who kidnapped me? Zhuo Shaoxian raised her head and looked at Madman nervously. That's right, it's me. Madman nodded. So this is what you look like. Zhuo Shaoxian murmured. He doesn't look so repulsive after all. What's wrong with you? As a captive, Shouldn't you be worried about your own safety? You're still in the mood to care what I look like." Lunatic was speechless. He raised his arm and slapped at the back of Zhuo Xiaoxian's head. "No, no, no!" Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately covered her head with her hands. Her face was filled with terror. Madman had a headache. He couldn't kill them, nor could he fight them. What should he do? His style was to either kill or get lost. He had never been alone with a woman before. He had never taken care of a woman before. Therefore, he could only knock this woman out again to avoid trouble. "Don't hit me. I promise I won't run around. Really, apart from some outrageous requests, I'll listen to everything you say." Zhuo Xiaoxian raised her head and looked at the madman with a pitiful face, trembling with fear. Some excessive requests? Madman was stunned and didn't react for a moment. He asked suspiciously, "What request?" "Exactly." Zhuo Xiaoxian was hesitant and hesitant. "Speak," Madman yelled. "Just don't take advantage of me." Zhuo Xiaoxian shuddered and blurted out, "Ugh." Madman was startled. His face darkened as he said angrily, "Am I that kind of person?" Zhuo Xiaoxian did not dare to say anything. Madman stared at her for a moment and said angrily, "Fine, I won't hit you, but you have to stay in the room obediently. You're not allowed to go anywhere, and you're not allowed to disturb me. I like peace and quiet." "Sure, sure." Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded and asked cautiously, "So you won't kill me?" "Why would I kill you?" Madman was suspicious. "Why did you kidnap me then?" Zhuo Xiaoxian was confused. "Hee, to exchange you for treasures, of course." Madman chuckled. "So you're after wealth." Zhuo Xiaoxian came to a realization. "Can't I?" Madman frowned. "Sure, sure, but can you not restrict my freedom?" "How do you expect me to stay in such a small room?" Zhuo Xiaoxian looked at Madman with a wronged expression. "Why do you have so many requests? Remember, don't even think about running away. We're not outside. We're inside a space artifact." Madman harumphed coldly and left the room. "You." Zhuo Xiaoxian was about to say something when Madman turned around and glared at her. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately shrunk her neck and lowered her head in fear. How troublesome! Madman rubbed his forehead and slammed the door shut before he went to cultivate in seclusion in the main hall. A while later, Zhuo Xiaoxian finally calmed down as she did not hear anything. She glanced around for a while before walking out of the room and standing on the balcony. There was a small balcony outside her room. Standing on the balcony, she could clearly see the buildings on both sides and the herb field in front of her. So many herbs? She was dumbfounded as she glanced at the boundless herb field. And the energy of the crystal veins and the spirit veins. How pure was that? How many spirit veins and crystal veins were there under the ground? A question immediately popped up in her mind. With so many herbs, spirit veins, and crystal veins, was there a need to be a robber? Even the city lord's mansion was nothing compared to this place. After calming herself down, she glanced at the courtyards and was slightly startled. There were still so many auras here. A while later, seeing that no one was paying attention to her, she returned to her room and took out the transmission godly stone to ask for help from her family. However, she could not find a cosmos ring after searching her entire body. Asshole. How dare he bully a woman? How inhumane. Zhuo Xiaoxian sat on the edge of the bed and cursed Madman softly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed outside. However, 3,000 years had passed in the Black Tortoise realm. After being locked in the room for 3,000 years, Zhuo Xiaoxian could no longer hold it in. She gently opened the door. "What are you doing?" Madman immediately opened his eyes and yelled. Zhuo Xiaoxian shrunk her neck and said timidly, "Well, there's no point in locking me up like this. You have to contact my father." "I've already contacted him." Madman said, "That's not right. Why hasn't my father come to save me yet?" "It's been 3,000 years. Zhuo Shaoxian frowned. Madman's eyes were filled with murderous intent when he heard that. What do you want? Zhuo Shaoxian immediately took a few steps back. Madman suddenly stood up and took a step forward, landing in front of Zhuo Shaoxian. He did not hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Don't kill me. I promise I won't disturb you again. I'll go back to my room right now. Zhuo Shaoxian quickly turned around and ran inside, closing the door. She was extremely scared. Madman stared at the door, his eyes flickering. A moment later, he walked out of the room, stood in the courtyard, and yelled, "Qin Feiyang, get your ass over here!" Qin Feiyang? In the room on the second floor, Zhuo Shaoxian was startled. She curiously sneaked to the balcony and looked down. Qin Feiyang's courtyard was not far from Madman's. Hearing Madman's yell, Qin Feiyang dragged the mermaid princess out of the attic. He looked at the furious Madman and said with a smile, "What are you doing?" What a beautiful big sister. Looking at the mermaid princess standing next to Qin Feiyang, even Zhuo Shaoxian, who was extraordinarily beautiful, could not help but be stunned. Madman landed in front of Qin Feiyang, glanced at the mermaid princess, then stared at Qin Feiyang and said angrily, "You're having a great time, hugging your wife and flirting inside all day." Cough, cough. Qin Feiyang choked. The mermaid princess also blushed. Speaking of which, it's been so long. Why hasn't your stomach reacted yet? Old Qin, can you do it? Madman looked at the two of them mockingly. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He said angrily, "You called me out just to make fun of us?" "I want to be in the mood too." Madman pursed his lips and said in a deep voice, "We neglected a problem." "What problem?" Qin Feiyang and the mermaid princess looked at him suspiciously. "A time array. 3 days have passed outside, and 3,000 years have passed in the black tortoise world. If we really let Zhuo Shaoxian out, she will definitely notice something. A time array that takes a day and 1,000 years. If news of this spreads, it will probably attract a lot of trouble," Madman said. Qin Feiyang heard this and could not help but frown. "The most important thing is, who knows when Zhuo Tianqing will gather the things you want? If we wait for a year or so, then it will be hundreds of thousands of years in the black tortoise world. I still have to take care of her for hundreds of thousands of years. Don't joke around. I might as well die." Madman was furious. The mermaid princess said helplessly, "Senior brother Madman, isn't it just temporarily taking care of a girl? Is there a need to be so impatient?" "My dear wife, you don't know this. Don't be fooled by our senior brother's usual imposing manner. This is the first time he is alone with a woman. It's embarrassing." Qin Feiyang smiled mockingly. "I see." The mermaid princess nodded in realization. She looked at Madman and said, "Senior brother, then you can treat her as a man." Madman was speechless. Such a big woman was placed there. How could he treat her as a man? What kind of logic was this? Madman said, "Anyway, I don't care. Hurry up and solve this matter." Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. "Why are you sighing?" Madman frowned. "Senior brother, you don't understand my painstaking efforts." Qin Feiyang sighed. "Painstaking efforts?" Madman was stunned. "Yes. Didn't you say it when we went to the Tianyue building last time? You are still single, so I asked you to take care of Zhuo Shaoxian. This is to create an opportunity for you. Look, this Zhuo Shaoxian has the talent and the figure. Let's talk about her identity. As the daughter of the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City, her identity is not low. She is more than enough for you." Qin Feiyang smiled. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched nonstop as he said angrily, "Are you crazy? Let's not talk about whether I will like her or not. Even if she is Zhuo Tianqing's daughter, that is impossible. Is this a problem? No. All right, hurry up and go back. Take good care of her." whether the netherworld devil flame can be upgraded to the 10th level, and whether I can get a 10th level divine rank pill furnace. It all depends on you. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. Madman glared at Qin Feiyong and turned back to his courtyard angrily. The mermaid princess retracted her gaze and looked at Qin Feiyong. Are you really creating an opportunity for him? How is that possible? I just don't want to get into trouble. Qin Feiyong chuckled. The mermaid princess was stunned, and then she couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. Qin Feiyong lowered his head and muttered to himself. Madman's words were indeed a problem. The time array of a day and 1,000 years could not be easily leaked out. Chapter 3039. Why don't they look like bad people? Zhuo Shaoxian, who was hiding on the balcony, looked at Qin Feiyong and the mermaid princess with suspicion in her eyes. Madman stood in the courtyard and raised his eyebrows slightly. He looked at the balcony and said, Have you seen enough? Zhuo Shaoxian's body stiffened. She stood up and looked at Madman. She smiled obsequiously and said, You found out. Do I look like a fool to you? Madman said angrily. No. Zhuo Shaoxian laughed dryly. Like a thief, she turned around and slipped into the room guiltily. My head hurts. Madman rubbed his forehead. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Half a month outside was 15,000 years in the black tortoise world. 15,000 years was equivalent to hundreds of generations in the mortal world. Zhuo Shaoxian seemed to have gotten used to life in the black tortoise world. She no longer complained about contacting her family. In the end, she even slowly integrated into everyone's circle of life. When she had time, she even helped Madman clean the courtyard. Madman was not used to it at first, but gradually he seemed to have gotten used to having such a person. Later, Madman also allowed her to leave the room and move around the courtyard. Even so, Zhuo Shaoxian was very happy. She spent all day tending to the flowers and plants in the courtyard. With her help, the courtyard was neat and tidy every day. This morning, Madman's nose twitched. He smelled a very fragrant smell. He stood up suspiciously and followed the fragrance into the backyard. He found Zhuo Shaoxian washing vegetables and cooking. Madman felt an inexplicable sense of enjoyment as he watched the back of the figure busying up and down in front of the stove. He did not make a sound. He leaned against the door frame, crossed his arms, and looked at Zhuo Shaoxian quietly. After a while, he shook his head, retracted his gaze, and silently turned to leave. After a while, Zhuo Shaoxian walked out of the backyard with a few side dishes and a small pot of millet. She placed them neatly on the stone table in the courtyard. Looking at the fragrant and delicious side dishes, Zhuo Shaoxian seemed to be impressed by her culinary skills and was very satisfied. Then, she looked at Madman and said with a smile, Come out and eat. Madman walked out with his hands behind his back. He looked at the dishes on the table and frowned. Can this be eaten? Zhuo Shaoxian said, You'll know if it's edible or not after you try it. Madman glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian suspiciously. He then sat down at the table, picked up his chopsticks, picked up a piece of vegetable, and put it into his mouth. Immediately, his expression froze. The taste was not bad. How is it? Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Madman expectantly, like a little girl waiting to be praised. Nothing much. Madman pursed his lips. You clearly look like you're delicious. Zhuo Shaoxian murmured unhappily. What haven't I eaten before? How can this simple meal satisfy my appetite? Madman's face was full of disdain. Then don't eat it. Zhuo Shaoxian dodged the chopsticks in the lunatic's hand. Look at my temper. Do you know whose territory this is? Madman glared fiercely. Zhuo Shaoxian smiled embarrassedly and gave the chopsticks back to lunatic. Madman took a sip of the millet porridge. It was sweet and tasty, crispy and chewy. It was really not bad. Then, he looked up at Zhuo Xiaoxian, who was sitting opposite him, and frowned. I say, why don't you know how to cultivate? What's so good about cultivation? Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head and said as she ate, Isn't cultivation good? Madman was stunned. Not good. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head, still lowering her head. There was a trace of sadness in her eyes, as if she thought of something sad. Why? Madman looked at her curiously. Zhuo Xiaoxian was silent for a long time, then shook her head and said, Nothing. What a strange woman. Madman shook his head. You're the strange one. Zhuo Xiaoxian pouted. Madman was stunned. He put down his bowl and chopsticks and frowned. You have to make yourself clear. How am I strange? It's true. You're not a bad person. Why do you always pretend to be fierce? Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head, looking timid. It was quite pitiful. I'm pretending? Madman was stunned. Who wasn't afraid of him in the Nine Heavens Palace? Not to mention the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace. Even the sea beasts of the heavenly cloud ocean would treat him like a demon. Zhuo Xiaoxian gathered her courage and looked at Madman. You kidnapped me for money? What else? Madman continued to eat. But you don't lack money at all. Look at the herbs you have here. You can sell any of them for a high price. And the spirit veins and crystal veins here are much more than the city, Lord's mansion. Zhuo Xiaoxian was confused. Of course we can't buy what we want. Madman said calmly. What is it? Zhuo Xiaoxian was curious. Why are you so talkative? Hurry up and eat. After that, clean the house. Madman glared at her. At this moment, someone walked out of the house next door. He looked at Madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian and smiled ambiguously. Little Madman, not bad. There's breakfast. That person was Xia Yuan. Although they rarely went out, they already knew that Madman had a woman in his house. What's with that look? Madman looked at Xia Yuan unhappily. See for yourself. With a hearty laugh, Xia Yuan turned and strode towards Qin Beishan's courtyard. What's wrong? Madman mumbled. Zhuo Xiaoxian glanced at Xia Yuan's back, then looked at Madman and asked suspiciously, Why does everyone call you Little Madman? Don't you have a name? Shut up. Madman glared again. Fine, I won't say it. Why are you being so fierce? Zhuo Xiaoxian pouted. Little Madman, eat it. It looks delicious. Another divine general passed by the house and chuckled. Madman's face darkened. He slammed the stone table and stood up angrily. Can't you let me have breakfast in peace? Fine, fine, fine. Go on, go on. The divine general turned around and left with a smile. Marshal, Uncle Madman, let me try it too. Soon, another young man ran over. He was very thick-skinned and directly went to Madman's side. This person was Wang Xiaojie. Get lost. Madman's veins bulged. Don't be so stingy. Wang Xiaojie did not care so much. He sat at the side and looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian. He chuckled and said, Marshal Aunt, give me a bowl. Ah, Zhuo Xiaoxian was stunned. Madman also froze on the spot. Forget it, I'll do it myself. Wang Xiaojie glanced at the two, ran into the backyard, and ran out with a bowl and chopsticks. He sat next to Madman and started eating. Not bad, not bad. Marshal Aunt, I really didn't expect that a rich young lady like you would be so good at cooking. Marshal Uncle Madman, what are you waiting for? If you don't eat, there won't be any left. As he ate, he continued to nag. Madman's face darkened. He slapped him and said angrily, Can you shut up? That's right. There's so much food, but it can't stop your mouth. At this moment, two more uninvited guests came. They were Long Tianyu and Qin Qin. Long Tianyu had been staying in the Black Tortoise realm. He used to live with the Beast Emperor, but after the Beast Emperor left, he lived with Wang Xiaojie and Qin Qin. Brother Madman, sister-in-law Xiaoxian, I hope I didn't disturb you. Long Tianyu looked at Madman and Zhuo Xiaoxian and asked. First it was martial aunt, and now it was sister-in-law. Zhuo Xiaoxian could not hold it in any longer. Madman's expression became even uglier. He looked at Wang Xiaojie, then at Long Tianyu, and finally at Qin. What was going on today? Why did all those people who usually did not go out and were immersed in cultivation come out today? Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Wang Xiaojie and the other two. He asked, "Did you guys plan this?" Plan? The three of them were stunned. Madman said in a deep voice, "Otherwise, why did you guys come out?" "We've been cultivating for too long. Can't we come out for some fresh air?" "Martial uncle, when did you become so stingy?" "We just freeloaded your breakfast. Is there a need to be like this?" "Look!" Martial aunt didn't say anything. Wang Xiaojie looked wronged. "Shut up!" Madman grabbed Wang Xiaojie and angrily transmitted his voice. "Kid, if you dare to say another word, I will tear your mouth apart." Okay. Wang Xiaojie nodded his head and finished the millet porridge in his bowl. He stood up and said, I'm full. Brother Qin, let's go around." "All right." Long Tianyu and Qin nodded. Then, the three of them ran out. Wang Xiaojie suddenly turned to look at Zhuo Xiaoxian and chuckled. "Martial aunt, we will all come to freeload tomorrow morning. Please prepare more." "Scram!" Madman roared. Seeing that the situation was bad, Wang Xiaojie and the other two shrunk their necks and immediately fled in panic. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face was flushed red. "Too naughty. I'll teach them a lesson another day." Madman looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian and laughed. But just as he finished speaking, his expression froze. Was there a need to explain to this woman? What the hell? Zhuo Xiaoxian lowered her head and only cared about eating. She did not say a word, but her eyes would occasionally glance at Madman. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. Madman was a little uncomfortable. In order to break the awkward atmosphere, he asked suspiciously, "Speaking of which, as Zhuo Tianqing's daughter, why do you know how to cook?" In your eyes, born in a wealthy family, should you open your mouth and open your mouth? Zhuo Xiaoxian was displeased. "Isn't that so?" Madman was stunned. "Some people are, some people aren't. I like to cook. Because only by sitting at the dining table and eating with my family can I feel like a family." Zhuo Xiaoxian pondered for a while and lowered her head. "What do you mean?" Madman's face was full of suspicion. "Nothing." Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head and lowered her head to eat for a while. Suddenly, she looked around and said strangely, "I like it here very much." And there was a sincere smile on her face. The more Madman listened, the more confused he became. What a strange woman. "If you like it here, then stay here." At this moment, the mermaid princess walked over and smiled. "Sister-in-law." Zhuo Xiaoxian hurriedly got up and ran toward the mermaid princess. Over the years, the mermaid princess often came to talk to her, so the two of them had a good relationship, and she had a good impression of Zhuo Xiaoxian. Because she did not see any of the characteristics of a rich young lady in Zhuo Xiaoxian, such as arrogance, spoiled, or willfulness. Instead, she was more like a cute girl next door. Let's go out for a walk." The mermaid princess smiled. "Okay." Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. Hey, do you think I'm not here? I told you that you can only move around in the courtyard." Madman hurriedly shouted. "Eat your food." The mermaid princess glared at him and pulled Zhuo Xiaoxian away. Madman was speechless. Why was this woman so troublesome? Chapter 3040. At the same time, Qin Feiyang knocked on the door of the mermaid princess and Zhuo Xiaoxian as he walked towards the courtyard of the lunatic. The lunatic also saw Qin Feiyang and walked out of the courtyard. Hence, the two of them stood together and looked at the back view of the two women in puzzlement. Senior brother, what is going on? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. I want to ask you the same question. The lunatic rolled his eyes. There is a problem. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang seemed to have noticed something. He looked toward the tea garden on the left and saw Wang Xiaojie and the other two hiding in the tea garden furtively. He did not know what they were mumbling about. These three lads must know something. Qin Feiyang muttered. The lunatic looked at the three of them and shouted, "All of you, get over here right now." The three of them were slightly stunned and looked toward Qin Feiyang and Zhuo Shaoxian. Wang Xiaojie asked suspiciously, "Uncle Master, are you talking to us?" "What do you think?" The lunatic stared at him with ill intentions. The three of them looked at each other and immediately ran toward their own courtyard. "Indeed, you have a guilty conscience." The lunatic sneered and took a step forward. He grabbed the three of them and returned to Qin Feiyang's side. "Tell me, what do you know?" Qin Feiyang said. "What and what? We don't know anything." Wang Xiaojie shook his head quickly. Qin Feiyang looked at Qin Qin. Qin Qin lowered his head to hide the panic on his face. "It seems that if I don't use my true strength, I won't be able to get you to speak the truth." The lunatic rolled up his sleeves, rubbed his palms, and laughed. Don't. I'll talk. Wang Xiaojie waved his hands quickly and said with a bitter expression, "This is your wife's idea." Qin Feiyang and the lunatic looked at each other and asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" "It means that—" Wang Xiaojie gritted his teeth and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Your wife wants to matchmake Uncle Master Lunatic and Zhuo Shaoxian." Ugh. Qin Feiyang and Qin Feng were dumbfounded. Madman continued, "So you're saying that she was the one who ordered you to come here and cause trouble?" "Yes." Wang Xiaojie nodded and hurriedly explained, "Mistress is also kind. Seeing that you have been alone for so many years, she wants to find a woman to take care of you." The madman's face was dark as he glared at Qin Feiyang. "Tell me honestly, did you participate?" "I swear to God I didn't." Qin Feiyang said hurriedly, "Really?" Madman's face was full of disbelief. "Really?" Qin Feiyang smiled wryly and said, "Maybe it's because I joked last time that I was creating an opportunity for you." So, the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Nonsense. Madman was speechless. "Martial uncle, mistress's foresight is not bad. Since she wants to matchmake you two, it means that this Zhuo Shaoxian must be a good woman. Why don't you just give in?" Wang Xiaojie chuckled. "Piss off." Madman's face was immediately filled with anger. "I was waiting for you to say that. All right, you two have a good chat. We'll leave right away." Wang Xiaojie snickered and immediately called Long Tianyu and Qin Qin to flee. "You little brat." Qin Feiyang laughed and looked at the mermaid princess and Zhuo Shaoxian again. He chuckled and said, "Senior brother, why don't you give in? Give in my ass." Madman glared at Qin Feiyang in annoyance before returning to his courtyard to continue eating. "To be honest, I'm also quite anxious about your marriage." Qin Feiyang followed him and said with a smile, "I'm not in the mood to think about that now. I just want to figure out the mystery of my birth." Madman shook his head. "If you're not in the mood to think about it, then why are you talking to me?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. He sniffed the remaining dishes on the table and said in surprise, "This smells good." "You don't say. I'm a little surprised about this. Tell me, how can a rich young lady like her be so good at cooking?" Madman was curious. "Don't you know how to ask her?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. "I did, but she didn't say. She only said that she likes to cook. She also said that only by eating with her family at the dining table can she feel like a family. She also said that she likes this place very much. I really don't understand." Madman shook his head. "She really said that?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." Madman nodded. Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and said with a smile, "It seems that she doesn't have a good life at home. She likes this place because it's peaceful and quiet." "You mean that there's a lot of scheming in her family?" Madman was suspicious. "Any rich family like her can't avoid scheming." Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. "It seems that she has a story too," Madman muttered. "I guess there are a lot of stories." Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Outside, in this half a month, Wind City could be said to be extremely lively. The death of Wang Hui and Wang Feng had spread. The entire city, Lord's Mansion, was looking for Qin Feiyong and Madman. The one who publicized this matter was naturally Su Yuan, because at that time he saw Wang Hui and his son being killed with his own eyes. As for the old ancestor of the Su family, he had really given up on revenge and had been reminding Su Yuan. Su Yuan agreed verbally, but he didn't care in his heart. At the same time, Wind City, City Lord's Mansion, in the main hall. Elder Yu hurriedly entered the main hall, looked at Zhuo Tianqing above, and said with a smile, "Lord, I have found the whereabouts of these two people." "Where?" Zhuo Tianqing suddenly stood up, and a cold light surged in his eyes. "Cloud Sea City." Elder Yu smiled. "They really are quite bold." They actually dared to head to Ocean of Cloud City openly. Zhuo Tiansheng was surprised. Not only that, they also opened a restaurant called Heavenly Joy Building in Cloud Sea City. Today is the official opening day. Earlier, the guards of the city, Lord's estate, unintentionally passed by Heavenly Joy Building. As soon as they saw them, they immediately sent a voice transmission to me. Elder Yu smiled. "Opening? That's a good thing. I'll personally go congratulate them." Zhuo Tiansheng laughed coldly, and then he activated a legendary altar and walked up it. Elder Yu followed behind him. Cloud Sea City. As one of the largest cities in the eastern continent, it was equally famous as Wind Sea City, and its scale was exactly the same as Wind Sea City. On a certain street in the city, the sound of gongs and drums resounded, and crowds of people were piled up into mountains. It was extremely bustling. Surprisingly, there was an ancient-style restaurant at the side. Everything was brand new, and it was covered in red flowers and filled with joy. At the entrance of the restaurant, a group of attendants stood side by side hurriedly. A man and a woman were standing right in front of them. The man wore a fitting black robe, had a tall figure, and an extraordinary appearance. The woman was tall, wore a white dress that was purer than snow, and her face was covered by a veil that covered her face below her eyes. However, it wasn't difficult to discern that she was a peerless beauty through her lively eyes and tender skin. That's right. The two of them were Yun Ziang and the Tower Master of Tianyue Tower. Today is the opening day of Tianyue Tower. All the dishes are 50% off, and we've also prepared the supreme grade wine Drunken Immortal for everyone to taste for free. If you're satisfied, I hope that everyone will visit us more often in the future. Yun Ziang looked at the crowd in front of him and laughed heartily. Drunken Immortal. Is it really a supreme grade wine? Someone immediately asked. How can it be fake? You'll know once you try it. Yun Ziang smiled. All right, I'll go try it. Me too. Many people rushed into Tianyue Tower. Welcome the guests. With Yun Ziang's shout, the attendants standing at the entrance immediately got busy. The woman looked at the customers entering Tianyue Tower, and a smile appeared on her face. She looked at Yun Ziang and said, Big Brother Yun, thank you. If it weren't for your help, I wouldn't have been able to take care of everything in just half a month by myself. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Yun Ziang waved his hand and then said, But from now on, don't play the zither anymore, lest you cause criticism. Okay. The woman nodded, then pondered for a while, and said worriedly, I wonder how they are now. Them. Yun Ziang was stunned. The woman said, Qin Dage and Big Brother Mo. Yun Ziang smiled and said, Heaven helps the good. Don't worry about them. After all, they helped me. How can I not worry? The woman shook her head. Yun Ziang's eyes flashed slightly, and he said with a smile, "All right, hurry up and greet the guests." "Okay." The woman nodded. "Get out of the way." But at this moment, a cold shout came from behind the crowd. Everyone turned around, and their pupils immediately shrank. They saw a group of guards walking over. Behind the guards, there was a middle-aged man and a red-haired old man. "It's the guards of the City Lord Mansion. What are they doing here?" "Wait, that middle-aged man seems a little familiar. I remember now. He's the Deputy City Lord of Wind Sea City, Zhuo Tiansheng. Why is he here at Tianyue Tower?" Everyone retreated to the side. Yun Ziang and the woman looked at each other. There was a trace of suspicion in their eyes, and then they hurriedly went forward. "I didn't expect Lord Zhuo of Wind Sea City to come to my Tianyue Tower in person. This is really an honor for my Tianyue Tower. Quickly come in," Yun Ziang said with a smile. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two of them and said, "What are your names?" "Yun Ziang." Yun Ziang smiled, then pointed at the woman, hesitated, and said, "This is my little sister." "Then do you know them?" Zhuo Tiansheng waved his hand, and Qin Feiyang and the madman's phantoms immediately appeared. The two of them were surprised. "I'm asking you, do you know them?" A guard shouted impatiently. Yes, we've met once." Yun Ziang quickly nodded. "Just once?" A cold light flashed in Zhuo Tianqing's eyes. Yun Ziang's heart trembled, and he asked suspiciously, "May I ask, what do you mean by that?" "Follow me." Zhuo Tianqing didn't answer, and directly opened an altar. "Where are we going?" Yun Ziang and the woman looked at Zhuo Tianqing suspiciously. The guard shouted, "If I tell you to go, then go. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" "Brother Yin, they don't seem to have good intentions." The woman transmitted her voice. "It's okay," Yun Ziang comforted and said with a smile, "Little sister, I'll go with Lord Zhuo. You take care of the restaurant." "She's going too," Zhuo Tiansheng said. "She's going too?" Yun Ziang frowned. "Yes." Zhuo Tiansheng nodded. "No, Lord Zhuo, what did we do wrong?" Yun Ziang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng with a puzzled face. Boom! But what answered him was a terrifying pressure. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two with a gloomy face and said, "I don't want to say it again." Good. Yun Ziang nodded, walked to a waiter, and said a few words. Then he brought the woman to Zhuo Tianqing's side. Elder Yu waved his hand and opened an altar. Zhuo Tianqing looked at the guards and said with a smile, "Tell the two city lords that I thank them for their help. After I'm done with the matter at hand, I'll personally come and thank them." "Okay. Lord Zhuo, take care." The guards nodded and bowed to send him off. "Let's go." Zhuo Tianqing glanced at Yun Ziang and stepped on the altar. Yun Ziang and the woman looked at each other and silently walked up. Elder Yu followed closely behind, and the four of them quickly disappeared. Chapter 3041. Wind Sea City, the City Lord's Mansion. When he brought Yun Ziang and the woman back to the main hall, Zhuo Tianqing sat on the chair above and looked down at them. Elder Yu stood beside the two of them, not saying a word. Yun Ziang looked at Zhuo Tianqing suspiciously and asked, "My lord, what's going on?" "Don't you know what's going on?" Zhuo Tianqing said gloomily. Yun Ziang and the woman looked at each other and said, "We really don't know. Please tell us." Zhuo Tianqing looked at the two, and his expression became more and more gloomy. Suddenly, he looked at Elder Yu beside him. Elder Yu immediately made a move and slapped at their Qi Ocean. "What are you doing?" Yun Ziang was always vigilant. When he saw Elder Yu's move, he immediately retreated with the woman. "Humph!" Elder Yu snorted and rushed forward like lightning, directly slapping on their Qi Ocean. Accompanied by a miserable groan, their Qi Ocean shattered on the spot. Lord Zhua, you, Yin Ziang glared at Zhua Tiancheng. The woman's eyes were also filled with anger. Shut him up. Zhua Tiancheng said. Elder Yu immediately released his aura and firmly restrained the two. Immediately after, Zhua Tiancheng took out the divine voice stone. Black Tortoise World. In the attic, Qin Feiyang looked at the mermaid princess and asked suspiciously, Why do you really want to matchmake Zhuo Shaoxian and Frenzy? Zhuo Shaoxian is a good girl. It's Frenzy's fortune to be able to marry her, mermaid princess said. How do you know she's a good girl? Qin Feiyang looked at her in shock. I've often chatted with her over the years, so I naturally have some understanding of her personality. And I also know about her family situation. Mermaid princess smiled. What's the situation? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Although she's deeply doted on by Zhua Tiancheng and the Zhua family, it's also because of this that her dozen or so half-brothers are very uncomfortable. They even tried to find opportunities to get rid of her many times. She knows all of this, but because she cares too much about her family and kinship, she has never told her father. She has been enduring it silently. She hopes that one day she can use this sincerity to move them. That's why she said she liked it here. Because here, she didn't see any scheming or scheming. We're not a family, but we're better than a family. The mermaid princess sighed. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded, then frowned and said, But she is Zhua Tianqing's daughter. So what? As long as the two of them find each other pleasing to the eye, this is not a problem. The mermaid princess shook her head. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Why do I feel that you have the aptitude to be a matchmaker? I'm just thinking for senior brother Crazy. He's been alone for so many years. How pitiful. Actually, you should know that Madman also yearns for a relationship. The mermaid princess said, Yes. His adoptive father died early, so he only has the first elder as his family. And the first elder is busy with the affairs of the Nine Heavens Palace, so it's hard for him to take care of Madman. That's why he's so reclusive. Qin Feiyang nodded. So, as long as there's even the slightest possibility, we have to help him. I've also asked around. Zhuo Shaoxian seems to have a good impression of Madman. The mermaid princess smiled. It can't be. With Madman's attitude, how can a woman have a good impression of him? Qin Feiyang was shocked. He couldn't believe it, even if he was beaten to death. It's true. Although Madman always has a fierce attitude, she told me that she can see that Madman's heart is not bad. The mermaid princess said, Then her eyesight is not bad. Senior Brother Crazy is a person who is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Qin Feiyang smiled. After being together for so many years, how could he not understand Madman? He looked cold on the outside, but his heart was filled with justice. He was also very loyal to his friends. For example, him. During those years in the ancient world, he took care of him a lot. Later, when he fought with the dragons, he also sacrificed himself. It could be said that Madman was the person he admired the most. It was just that this matter was a bit difficult to solve. First of all, Madman's attitude towards Zhuo Shaoxian. Did he have this intention? Then there was Zhuo Tiancheng. Even if Madman and Zhuo Shaoxian had a good impression of each other, Zhuo Tiancheng would not agree. Buzz! Suddenly, the divine sound transmission stone rang. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses. He shook his head and muttered, There's no sign of anything happening yet. Why am I thinking so much? Then, he took out the divine sound transmission stone and checked it. He was slightly stunned. What's wrong? The mermaid princess looked at him suspiciously. Zhuo Tiancheng, Qin Feiyang said. He found the alchemy fire and furnace so quickly? The mermaid princess was surprised. After all, he is the deputy city lord of Wind Sea City. Qin Feiyang smiled and activated the divine sound transmission stone. Zhuo Tianqing's shadow immediately appeared. Lord Jua, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Qin Feiyang laughed. Yun Ziang and Zhuo Shaoxian were standing below, so Qin Feiyang did not see them. I've also been waiting for a long time, Zhuo Tiancheng said coldly. Come to the city, Lord's mansion. City, Lord's mansion? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and shook his head. I don't dare. The city, Lord's mansion, is your territory. If I go there, wouldn't I be walking into a trap? I didn't expect there to be something you're afraid of. Zhuo Tiancheng sneered. That's for sure. Come to my place to trade. Qin Feiyang gave Zhuo Tiancheng a coordinate and turned off the divine sound transmission stone. It can't be a trap. The mermaid princess was a little worried. I'll be careful. Qin Feiyang smiled and left the ancient castle, standing alone in the sky above the mountain range. Time passed breath by breath. About 100 breaths later, whoosh! 2 figures suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. It was Zhuo Tiancheng and Elder Yu. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Yu, and his pupils shrank slightly. This was another terrifying sovereign realm expert. Moreover, the aura he emitted was not much weaker than Zhuo Tiancheng's. Where's Xian? Zhuo Tiancheng glanced at the space around Qin Feiyang and frowned. Did you bring the things I wanted? Qin Feiyang did not answer, but asked instead. Zhuo Tiancheng smiled coldly and said, Compared to the things you want, I think there are 2 people you're more interested in. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Was there really a trap? Zhuo Tiancheng looked at Elder Yu, who nodded and smiled. He raised his old arm and waved gently. Yun Ziang and Zhuo Shaoxian appeared beside Elder Yu. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 of them in surprise. Yun Ziang sighed and said, Brother Qin, we've really been put in a lot of trouble by you this time. The woman's eyes were also filled with a bitter smile. She had never thought that Zhuo Tiancheng would capture them because of this person. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Zhuo Tiancheng and frowned. What do you mean? Isn't it simple? A person exchange, Zhuo Tiancheng said. You mean to exchange them for Zhuo Shaoxian? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes, Zhuo Tiancheng nodded and said with a smile, 2 for 1. It's a good deal. Qin Feiyang was stunned. What? Do you think this bargaining chip is not enough? Zhuo Tiancheng looked at him mockingly. Wait! Qin Feiyang promptly raised his hand to stop Zhuo Tiancheng, who was immensely proud of himself, and said, Before you did this, did you inquire about my relationship with them? Of course I did. Your companions. Zhuo Tiancheng said. Companions? Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tiancheng in amazement and asked, Who did you ask? Su Yuan, Zhuo Tiancheng said. Su Yuan? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. The patriarch of the Su family. It was also because of him that I was able to find these 2 people. Zhuo Tiancheng sneered. So it's him. Then I'm laughing. Su Yuan has only seen me once. You actually believe his words? Qin Feiyang shook his head, his face full of ridicule. Zhuo Tiancheng and Elder Yu looked at each other, and a trace of surprise crept into their eyes. I might as well tell you the truth. I only met them in Tianhua building. Let alone companions, we're not even friends. So the bargaining chip you think is worthless in my eyes. Qin Feiyang laughed. This, Zhuo Tiancheng was stunned. Elder Yu said, Lord, don't worry. Maybe he's just pretending to be calm. Zhuo Tiancheng's eyes flashed, and he looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, You really don't care? Do as you wish. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Good. Zhuo Tiancheng nodded, and a trace of hostility crept up between his eyebrows. He shouted, Elder Yu, kill Yun Ziang for me. Elder Yu immediately sent a palm strike towards Yun Ziang's head. Qin Feiyang didn't have any waves, because he and Yun Ziang had only met once, and there was no relationship between them. Brother Qin, you can't be so heartless. Although we've only met for the second time, there's a good saying that saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. Yun Ziang couldn't stay calm and hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang. Do I look like such a kind person to you? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yes. Yun Ziang nodded firmly. Qin Feiyang laughed and shook his head. We're all adults, so naive. Finished. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu and said faintly, I won't hinder you, goodbye. Then he disappeared without a trace. This, Elder Yu's arm stiffened. Zhuo Tiansheng's whole person also froze there. He really didn't care at all. See, do you believe this? We're not familiar with him at all. Yun Ziang was helpless. Elder Yu glanced at Yun Ziang, looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and said with a wry smile, Lord, it seems that we were wrong. This damn Su Yuan is simply wasting my time. Zhuo Tiansheng suddenly burned with anger. Cough, cough. Yun Ziang coughed, looked at Zhuo Tiansheng and asked, Lord Zhuo, can you let us go now? We still have to go back and greet the guests. Zhuo Tiansheng looked at the two of them coldly, and his eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. Since you have no value, then why keep you? Kill them for me. Elder, you raised his arm again. At the same time, Black Tortoise Realm. Qin Feiyang stood in the air, looking at the scene in front of him. Frenzy, Zhuo Shaoxian, and the mermaid princess were also standing beside him. Qin Dage, do you want me to go out and talk to father? Zhuo Shaoxian asked carefully. Shut up. Frenzy glared at her, and then looked at Yun Ziang without blinking. Qin Feiyang ignored Zhuo Shaoxian, and his eyes were fixed on Yun Ziang. Sister-in-law, seeing this, Zhuo Shaoxian couldn't help but look at the mermaid princess for help. Don't worry. Yun Ziang is not a simple person, so Feiyang and Frenzy want to take advantage of this opportunity to see how deep this Yun Ziang is hiding. The mermaid princess comforted in a soft voice. I see. Zhuo Shaoxian came to a realization, and then looked at Yun Ziang curiously. Chapter 3042. Outside, Yun Ziang was extremely anxious. Brother Qin, are you really that heartless? The woman's face was also deathly pale. She had never thought that she would encounter such an unexpected disaster. At this point, Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu finally completely believed that these two people really didn't have a deep relationship with Qin Feiyang. But it was also because of this that they were even more angry. After wasting so much time, they only managed to catch 2 useless people. To them, killing 1 or 2 nameless pawns was like a joke. So, they didn't care about killing the innocent at all, as long as they could vent the anger in their hearts. Elder Yu's palm fell, and Yun Ziang and the woman were in imminent danger. But at this moment, Yun Ziang shook his head and sighed helplessly. It seems that we can only save ourselves. The woman looked suspiciously at Yun Ziang. Yun Ziang suddenly raised his head, a trace of contempt flashing in his eyes, and a terrifying murderous aura suddenly appeared from his body. What? Elder Yu was shocked and hurriedly retreated without hesitation, because he actually felt the threat of death from this murderous aura. Zhuo Tiansheng was also shocked. What was going on? But that murderous aura was like a flash in the pan, disappearing in an instant. Yun Ziang tidied up his somewhat messy clothes, and there was no longer any trace of panic on his face. He looked incomparably calm and composed. Brother Yun Yu. The woman was even more surprised. At this moment, in her eyes, Yun Ziang was like a vast ocean, mysterious and unfathomable. Don't be afraid. Yun Ziang smiled slightly, looking at Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu. I didn't want to be so high-profile, but you two are so insensible. Their pupils contracted. Yun Ziang smiled. Tell me, how do you want to die? Although he was smiling, his smile caused one to tremble with fear. Who exactly are you? Zhuo Tiansheng said gloomily. That's not important. What's important is, how do you want to die? Yun Ziang was still smiling, but it made Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng's hair stand on end. It was as if a devil was hiding under that smiling face. Zhuo Tiansheng and the other two swallowed their saliva. Whoosh! Suddenly, the two of them turned around at the same time, took a step forward and flew into the air. Escape! Yun Ziang chuckled and raised a finger. That murderous aura reappeared, turning into two strands that pierced through Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianqing's bellies like strands of hair. An arrow of blood shot out. The two of them were shocked. What kind of method was this? The Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang and the madman were also shocked. They knew that Yun Ziang was definitely hiding something, but they didn't expect it to be so terrifying. One had to know. Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tiansheng were both late-stage sovereigns. But at this moment, he was actually being crushed by Yun Ziang without any strength to fight back. So strong! Zhuo Shaoxian was also shocked. She quickly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Qin Dage, let me out or father will die. Can you solve the problem if you go out? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Zhuo Shaoxian roared, but I can't watch father be killed. Outside, Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tianqing stopped in the air, not daring to escape. They looked at Yun Ziang in horror. There was also a trace of fear in the woman's eyes. She didn't expect Yun Ziang to be so strong. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of breaking air, the two strands of murderous aura returned to Yun Ziang's body. Then, he looked at the two of them and smiled. Have you decided? How do you want to die? Zhuo Tiansheng and Zhuo Tianqing looked at each other and quickly bowed. Sorry, we have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please be magnanimous. Don't say such useless things. Don't challenge my patience. Yun Ziang shook his head. The two of them were terrified to the extreme and hated Su Yuan to the extreme. What kind of rotten idea was this? Not only did they fail to save Zhuo Shaoxian, but they also provoked such a terrifying existence. You don't want to say it, right? Then I'll destroy your souls. Yun Ziang smiled slightly. Whoosh! At this moment, 3 figures appeared. They were Qin Feiyang, Lunatic, and Zhuo Shaoxian. Don't kill my father. Zhuo Shaoxian immediately ran to Zhuo Tiansheng and stood in front of him, looking at Yun Ziang and begging. Xianer. Zhuo Tiansheng was overjoyed. He asked, Are you okay? I'm fine. Qin Dage and the others didn't hurt me. Instead, they took good care of me. Zhuo Shaoxian shook her head. Zhuo Tiansheng couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic. Then he shuddered and quickly stood in front of Zhuo Shaoxian, protecting her behind him. From this action, it could be seen that he really loved this daughter of his. Even if his Sea of Qi was destroyed, he still wanted to protect his daughter. Yun Ziang looked at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic. He said, I thought you guys had already left. If we were leaving, would we be able to watch this show? Lunatic chuckled. Yun Ziang was startled. He said with a smile, From what you're saying, it seems you already knew I was hiding something. We're both sensible people. Why are you still pretending? Tell me, who are you? More specifically, what's your intention for approaching us? Lunatic said, Approaching you? Yun Ziang looked at the two in shock. He said, We've only met by chance. Besides, you're not important people. Why would I approach you? Is that really so? Lunatic sneered. Of course. I thought we could be friends, but I didn't expect you to be so heartless. Looks like I'm not worthy of being your friend. Yun Ziang shook his head and sighed. Lunatic said, It's us who are not worthy of being your friend. Haha, Yun Ziang smiled and said, Let's deal with business first. Hearing this, Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianqing's eyes trembled. The so-called business was definitely referring to them. As expected, Yun Ziang suddenly waved his hand, and that murderous aura appeared again, charging towards Zhuo Tianxing. Hurry up and leave. Zhuo Tianxing roared. However, not only did Zhuo Shaoxian not leave, she even took a step in front of Zhuo Tianxing. Zhuo Tianxing roared. Father, hurry up and leave, Zhuo Shaoxian said without turning her head. How touching! Yun Ziang chuckled. Humph! But at this time, Lunatic snorted coldly. As a golden light appeared, a halberd appeared. Heaven-defying divine art. Yun Ziang and the woman looked at Lunatic in surprise. He actually mastered a heaven-defying divine art. Clang! Lunatic grabbed the halberd and slashed at the murderous aura. Senior brother, no. Qin Feiyang's expression changed slightly as he shouted. Even Elder Yu and Zhuo Tianxing couldn't resist that murderous aura, let alone Lunatic. Even a heaven-defying divine art would be no match for it. However, Lunatic turned a deaf ear to it. In an instant, the halberd collided with the murderous aura, and with a crack the halberd shattered. Lunatic was immediately sent flying, and blood spurted out of his mouth. That huge force almost tore his body into pieces. Lunatic, Zhuo Shaoxian exclaimed and rushed forward. Get lost! Lunatic stepped into the air and forcefully stabilized his body. His aura rushed out and sent Zhuo Shaoxian flying. Then, he looked at Yun Ziang and laughed. So this is not your ability. It's just a murderous aura. Murderous aura. Qin Feiyang was stunned and quickly looked at the murderous aura. Upon closer inspection, the aura emitted by the murderous aura was indeed different from Yun Ziang's. In other words, this murderous aura should be formed by the murderous aura of a certain expert to protect Yun Ziang. And Yun Ziang's strength was the same as what they had seen. He was still at the half-step invincible realm. However, even so, it was still a bit shocking. A murderous aura could make Zhuo Tianxing and Zhuo Shaoxian unable to fight back. Then how terrifying was the cultivation of the owner of this murderous aura. And from this point, it could be seen that Yun Ziang's identity was really not simple. Could it be, did this person really intend to approach them? If that was the case, then Yun Ziang must have already known their origins. A murderous aura also appeared in Qin Feiyang's eyes. Yun Ziang chuckled and said, Brother Mo, you have good eyesight, but even if it's a murderous aura, it's not something you can fight against. Those who look down on me usually pay a heavy price. Lunatic laughed, and the space between his eyebrows suddenly split open, revealing a third blood eye. Yun Ziang and the woman looked at the blood eye. Innate supernatural power, open. Lunatic smiled coldly. The two's bodies immediately began to petrify. The two of them were shocked. Elder Yu, Zhuo Tianxing, and Zhuo Shaoxian were also shocked. They were all behind Lunatic, so they didn't see his blood eye. But even so, they still felt a chill. Especially Zhuo Shaoxian. Her cultivation was the weakest. Even if she didn't see the blood eye with her own eyes, she couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. However, just as Yun Ziang and the woman were completely petrified, the murderous aura suddenly attacked Lunatic's blood eye. Old Qin, kill Yun Ziang! Lunatic shouted. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and slapped at Yun Ziang. At this moment, Yun Ziang's body was almost petrified and only his soul was left. And even his soul was about to be petrified. He wanted to dodge the incoming Qin Feiyang, but his petrified body couldn't move. And he was shocked to find that after his body was petrified, it was like a cage, and his soul couldn't escape from his sea of consciousness. At the critical moment, the murderous aura turned in the air, exuding a monstrous aura, and forcibly cut off Lunatic's petrification. Immediately after, the murderous aura took Yun Ziang and the woman away, disappearing from their sight in the blink of an eye. Escaped? Lunatic was stunned. Qin Feiyang was also surprised. Logically speaking, the murderous aura was more than enough to deal with them. So why did it escape? Could it be because it sensed the existence of the ancient castle? However, it wasn't that easy for the murderous aura to kill them, because they could enter the Black Tortoise realm. Although Yunxiang controlled the laws of space and time, with the ancient castle guarding, even an expert like Elder Hai couldn't break into the Black Tortoise realm, let alone Yunxiang. Whoosh! At the same time, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. Zhuo Shaoxian asked for a divine life pill from Zhuo Tianqing and ran to Lunatic, saying, "Thank you, take it." Lunatic closed his blood eye and glanced at Zhuo Shaoxian, saying, "Don't misunderstand. I didn't attack him to save you, but because he has designs on us." "How can you be so ungrateful? Aren't I using it to heal you?" Zhuo Shaoxian looked at Lunatic angrily. "No need, I have my own." Lunatic took out a divine life pill and threw it into his mouth. Zhuo Shaoxian stomped her feet in anger. "What's going on?" Zhuo Tiansheng and Elder Yu couldn't help but look at each other when they saw this scene. Logically speaking, shouldn't Shaoxian hate them? After all, they were the ones who kidnapped her. But why was she so concerned about them now? Chapter 3043. Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Tianqing and said with a smile, "Master Zhuo, let's talk about our business." Zhuo Tianqing's eyes darkened. "Even though we kidnapped your daughter, did you see any injuries on her body? We're quite sincere, aren't we? But what about you? What did you do?" Qin Feiyang's eyes glittered coldly as his divine might surged and restrained Zhuo Shaoxian. "Don't." Zhuo Tianqing was extremely anxious. "Brother Qin, it's not that we don't want to be honest, but it's too difficult to find a 10th level divine grade cauldron. There's nothing we can do." Old Man Yu hurriedly explained. Yes. Such cauldrons are usually in the hands of the famous alchemy masters. They're either protected by a powerful force, or they're very strong themselves. If you want a 9th level divine grade cauldron, I can think of a way, but a 10th level one? There's nothing I can do. Zhuo Tianqing nodded in agreement. Is it that difficult? Qin Feiyang frowned. He thought it wouldn't be difficult to find a 10th level divine grade cauldron as long as he put his mind to it. But after hearing what they said, he felt that it was even rarer than a rare treasure. "Why don't you let Shaoxian go first, and I'll try my best to help you." "Don't worry, I won't play any tricks this time. After all, Old Man Yu, and I would have been killed by Yunxiang if he didn't show up. I'm not a good person, but I won't bite the hand that feeds me." Zhuo Tianqing hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said to Madman, "Senior brother Madman, what do you think?" "You can decide. Why are you asking me?" Madman was speechless. Qin Feiyang frowned. To be honest, he couldn't trust Zhuo Tianqing at all. "I'm not going back." Suddenly, Zhuo Shaoxian said. "What?" Zhuo Tianqing and Old Man Yu were stunned. Qin Feiyang and Madman also looked at her in shock. Not going back. Was there something wrong with this woman's brain? "Shaoxian, what did you say?" "Why not?" Zhuo Tianqing had a suspicious look on his face, seriously wondering if there was something wrong with his ears. "It's already been more than 10,000 years, and you're only thinking of saving me now. I can see that you don't care about me at all, so why should I go back?" Zhuo Shaoxian snorted coldly. When Qin Feiyang and the madman heard this, they immediately had a bad feeling. Sure enough, what he was worried about was discovered. Over 10,000 years, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu looked at each other, their faces also full of astonishment. "Shaoxian, were you abused by them?" Elder Yu asked. "Abuse?" Zhuo Shaoxian paused briefly, then said angrily, "They didn't abuse me. If they did, how could I still be standing here unharmed? Then why are you so confused? It's only been half a month. How could it be more than 10,000 years? Elder Yu was speechless. Half a month? Zhuo Shaoxian was surprised. How could it only be half a month? It was clearly more than 10,000 years. It's really only been half a month. Don't you know your father? In father's house, you are father's life. You were kidnapped by them. How could I not be anxious? Zhuo Tianqing sighed. It's really only been half a month. Zhuo Shaoxian muttered. But why had more than 10,000 years passed in the Black Tortoise world? Could it be she wasn't stupid, and as Zhuo Tianqing's daughter, she was someone who had seen the world? She immediately thought of the time array. Could it be that there was a time array in the Black Tortoise world that lasted a day, and 1,000 years? Half a month had passed outside. It seemed to be exactly 15,000 years in the Black Tortoise world. It was really a time array that lasted a day and 1,000 years. Her heart was filled with disbelief. Just who were these people? They actually had such a terrifying time array. In the sky cloud world, there were many time arrays that lasted a day, a few years, a few decades, a few centuries. Just like her city lord mansion, there was a time array. However, this was the first time she had heard of a time array that lasted a day and 1,000 years. Perhaps only the 4 superforces had this kind of time array. Damned woman, what should be said? What shouldn't be said? It's best to know your limits. Madman suddenly transmitted his voice. Hearing this, Zhuo Shaoxian immediately puffed up her cheeks and snorted. If you dare to bully me, I'll tell others. You're courting death. Killing intent flashed in Madman's eyes. Zhuo Shaoxian's delicate body trembled, and a trace of fear crept onto her face. Brother, let's talk nicely. Seeing this, Zhuo Tianqing hurriedly looked at Madman and said, although he didn't know what was going on, he definitely couldn't let his daughter be in danger. Madman glanced at Zhuo Tianqing, then looked at Zhuo Shaoxian and said, how troublesome! Get lost with your father! Zhuo Tianqing was overjoyed and hurriedly said, daughter, come home with me. No. Zhuo Shaoxian shook her head. Why? Did they give you some kind of bewitching potion? Zhuo Tianqing frowned. What was going on? But Zhuo Shaoxian ignored Zhuo Tianqing and even treated him as heir. She looked directly at Madman and said, unhappily, you want me to go back, but I won't. The corner of Madman's mouth twitched. This woman was indeed sick. When Qin Feiyong saw this scene, there was a faintly discernible smile on his face. Although he was also an idiot in the eyes of others, as someone who had experienced it, he could be considered to have some experience. From Zhuo Shaoxian's current behavior, it wasn't hard to see that she did have a good impression of Madman. At the same time, looking at Madman and Zhuo Shaoxian, who were staring at each other, Elder Yu said, City Lord, I think something is wrong. Yes, something is wrong, but what exactly is wrong? Zhuo Tianqing mumbled. He wasn't blind, so he could naturally see the situation between the two. But what was going on? As an experienced person, can't you see it? They're obviously quarreling like a young couple. Elder Yu was speechless. What? Zhuo Tianqing was stunned and quickly said in his heart, no way. See for yourself. Elder Yu was helpless. Zhuo Tianqing looked at the two of them, and after a closer look, it seemed to be true. How could they have feelings for each other? Wasn't this nonsense? This kind of thing couldn't be done. One had to know. These two were robbers, and they were the ones who killed Wang Hui. As a member of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, although Wang Hui wasn't an important person, the higher-ups of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance would investigate this matter sooner or later. If this precious daughter of his was really related to these two, not only would she be implicated, but the entire Zhuo family would be implicated. Shaoxian, can you come back with me first? Everyone is worried about you. You can't let them worry about you all the time. Zhuo Tianqing said. Worried about me? Zhuo Shaoxian was slightly startled and said in a suspicious tone, Who else is worried about me apart from you? Your brothers and your aunts. Zhuo Tianqing said with a smile. They're worried about me? Zhuo Shaoxian was startled. What are you talking about? They're your family. Of course they're worried about you when you're in trouble. Zhuo Tianqing looked at Zhuo Shaoxian unhappily. Zhuo Shaoxian fell silent, with a hint of self-mockery in her eyes. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. It seemed like Zhuo Tianqing had no idea that Zhuo Shaoxian was being ostracized in the Zhuo family. All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang looked at Zhuo Shaoxian and said with a smile, "You should go back." "Qin Dage, even you dare to ask me to leave?" Zhuo Shaoxian immediately felt helpless. She had gotten used to living a carefree life in the Black Tortoise realm for 15,000 years. She really did not want to go back. The reason being that her heart was filled with disgust whenever she thought of the scheming in her family. "We can't afford to keep idlers here." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Zhuo Shaoxian immediately felt wronged. It turned out that even these people despised her. Maniac took out a cosmos ring and tossed it to Zhuo Shaoxian. He then glanced at Zhuo Tianqing and waved his hand impatiently. "Take her and leave at once." The cosmos ring belonged to Zhuo Shaoxian. Maniac had been keeping it safe. He had taken it away to prevent Zhuo Shaoxian from leaking the situation in the Black Tortoise realm to the people outside. Sure. Zhuo Tianqing was overjoyed. He immediately went forward with Old Yu and brought Zhuo Shaoxian away. "Don't forget what you promised us," Qin Feiyang reminded him. "I'll try my best." Zhuo Tianqing nodded. Soon, the three of them disappeared without a trace. Qin Feiyang glanced at Maniac and teased, "Senior brother Maniac, are you really willing to let her go?" "What do you mean by that?" "As if I really want her to stay." Maniac raised his eyebrows. "Huh." Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and brought Maniac into the Black Tortoise realm. "It's quiet now. Finally, I can calm my heart and cultivate." Maniac laughed heartlessly and flew towards the courtyard. "Can I really calm down?" Qin Feiyang looked at Maniac's back with a playful smile. "Are you really letting Shaoxian go?" Mermaid Princess walked to Qin Feiyang's side and asked suspiciously. "Yes, she doesn't want to leave yet." Qin Feiyang nodded. Mermaid Princess was stunned and asked in confusion, "Then why did you let her go?" "You don't understand. Right now, the two of them are not sure if they really like each other in their hearts. If they still get along like before, I don't know how long they will have to wait before they can clearly recognize their own hearts. That's why I want them to temporarily separate, because after separating, they won't be able to see each other, and the true thoughts in their hearts will slowly appear." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "So that's how it is." Mermaid Princess nodded in realization, then covered her mouth and laughed. "You are so good at dealing with other people's feelings, but when it came to me, you were like a block of wood." Qin Feiyang was stunned, then his face darkened. He picked up the Mermaid Princess and laughed evilly. "Smelly girl, you dare to laugh at me. See how I'll deal with you today." With that, he carried the Mermaid Princess and rushed into the attic, closing the door with a bang. For a moment, the room was filled with boundless spring scenery. Windsea City, Lord's Mansion. In a hall. "Shaoxian, you're finally back. We've been worried sick these days. Now that you're fine, we can finally let out a sigh of relief. How are you? Did they hurt you?" "Let us take a look. It's only been half a month, and you seem to have lost weight." More than 10 young men surrounded Zhuo Shaoxian, their faces full of concern and joy. On the side, Zhuo Tianqing and Elder Yu were all smiles when they saw this scene. However, Zhuo Shaoxian was disgusted by these hypocritical faces. Chapter 3044. That's enough. Your sister just came back. She must be tired. Let her rest. Zhuo Tianqing waved his hand and smiled. "Okay, have a good rest, Shaoxian. We'll come to see you another day. We'll take you out for a walk then." The group of young men smiled and left together. However, as soon as they walked out of the hall, their expressions changed. I didn't expect her to come back alive. Humph, she can't even kill a woman, and she wants to be a kidnapper. What a piece of trash. She's lucky this time. The group of young men discussed in secret as they walked away. Zhuo Shaoxian looked at the backs of the group of young men and couldn't help but think of the time in the Black Tortoise realm. Everyone living together happily, without scheming against each other, without ambition or desire. That was the kind of life she yearned for. Zhuo Shaoxian sighed inwardly. She looked at Zhuo Tianqing and said, "Father, I'm tired. I'll go back first." "Go, go." Zhuo Tianqing waved his hand. Zhuo Shaoxian turned and walked out of the hall, gradually disappearing at the end of a quiet path. Elder Yu frowned and said, "My lord, something's wrong with Shaoxian." "Yes, she looks absent-minded. I wonder what happened to her in the past half a month." Zhuo Tianqing's face was full of worry. "Half a month," Elder Yu murmured, his eyes shining. He said in a low voice, "My lord, what did Shaoxian mean when she said that?" "What did she say?" Zhuo Tianqing was suspicious. Elder Yu said she said more than 10,000 years. Zhuo Tianqing was slightly stunned. He frowned and said she must be confused. Elder Yu said, "But do you think Shaoxian looks confused now?" "Well," Zhuo Tianqing frowned and asked, "what do you think?" "If Shaoxian didn't lie, then I think their spatial divine item must have a time array," Elder Yu said in a deep voice. "A time array." Zhuo Tianqing's eyes trembled. Shaoxian said more than 10,000 years had passed, but only half a month had passed in the outside world. What does that mean? It means that if there's a time array, it's still 1,000 years. Even in the entire sky cloud realm, such a time formation is rare. I think the identities of these two people are definitely not simple. "Old man," you said. At first, Zhuo Tianqing hadn't paid much attention to it, but when he heard Elder Yu's words, he was shocked. If Elder Yu's guess was correct, then these two people really did have a great background. He pondered for a moment. Zhuo Tianqing said in a low voice, "Go and investigate the background of these two people immediately." "Yes," Elder Yu nodded, then asked, "Then what about the pale fire and pale furnace?" Zhuo Tianqing pondered for a moment before sighing. "After all, he saved our lives. Let's try to find him one. If we really can't find it, we'll just give him a 9th grade divine grade pale furnace as a token of our gratitude." "Understood." Old man, you nodded. "Also, make the Su family disappear from this world." Zhuo Tianqing's eyes flashed with killing intent. If it wasn't for Su Yuan's bad idea, would they almost fall in the hands of Yunxiang? He wasn't a good person to begin with, so he couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. "Got it. I'll do it right away." A murderous glint flashed across Elder Yu's eyes as he activated an altar and left. Old Zhuo, quickly come and see me." Suddenly, a voice full of energy and with a sense of majesty sounded in Zhuo Tianqing's mind. Zhuo Tianqing's gaze trembled as he hurriedly walked out of the hall and flew towards the most magnificent palace in the center of the city, Lord's Mansion. Soon, Zhuo Tianqing landed in front of the palace gate. "Come in." The voice came from the main hall. Zhuo Tianqing pushed open the door of the main hall and saw a middle-aged man in his 30s sitting on the throne at the top of the main hall. This person was about 1.8 meters tall and wore a purple python robe. His body was neither fat nor thin, but he was very muscular. As he sat there, he was like a divine king, full of majesty. "Greetings, city lord." Zhuo Tianqing walked to the middle-aged man and bowed. That's right. This person was the city lord of Winxi City. Zhuo Tianqing, the vice city lord, did not dare to be rash in front of this person. "Sit." The city lord pointed to the seat beside him. Zhuo Tianqing nodded, walked over, sat on the seat, and said with a smile, "City lord, aren't you in seclusion? Why did you come out? Did you break through?" It's not that easy to become a perfected dominator. The city lord shook his head. From his words, one could tell that this city lord was a terrifying, perfected dominator. Then why did you come out? Zhuo Tiansheng looked at him doubtfully. I just received a message from the vice leader saying that something happened in Wind City under our jurisdiction. Do you know about it? The city lord asked. Zhuo Tiansheng's heart trembled. The higher-ups had indeed started investigating this matter. He did not dare to hide anything and nodded. I know. Then how did Wang Hui die? The city lord frowned. He was killed by 2 young men. One of them is surnamed Qin, and the other is surnamed Mo. Both of them are somewhat arrogant. To tell you the truth, my daughter Xian was also kidnapped by them some time ago. It was only just now that I managed to rescue her. Zhuo Tianqing sighed. What? There's such a thing. Why didn't you tell me about such a big matter? A trace of anger appeared between the city lord's brows. It's not a big matter. Why should I tell you? Besides, isn't Xian fine now? Zhuo Tianqing smiled faintly. No matter what, Xian is my adopted daughter. If she's in danger, how can I just sit back and watch? If something like this happens again in the future, don't hide it from me. Although Xian is only my adopted daughter, I treat her as my own. My love for her is no less than that of you, her biological father. The city lord looked displeased. Yes. Zhuo Tiansheng hurriedly smiled apologetically. Then who are these 2 young men? They even dared to kidnap Xian. They don't know that Xian is your daughter. The city lord frowned. They know. It's because Xian is my daughter that they kidnapped her. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled bitterly and did not hide anything. He told the city lord the whole situation in detail. This included the time array that they suspected. I see. The city lord nodded and shook his head with a smile. Controlling Wang Hui, possessing a high-grade, heaven-defying divine artifact, and possibly a time array that lasts 1,000 years. It seems that these 2 young men are not simple. That's why I've already asked Elder Yu to investigate their identities. I hope we can find something. Zhuo Tianqing said. The city lord asked. Then how did the grudge between him and Wang Hui arise? Wang Hui told me about this. It seems that his son Wang Feng caused trouble in a restaurant called Tianyue Restaurant. Coincidentally, the 2 of them were also drinking in Tianyue Restaurant. Hence, the 2 of them found each other an eyesore, so they killed the people around Wang Feng. Later, Wang Hui appeared and wanted to take down the 2 of them. However, in the end he fell into their hands. Zhuo Tianqing shook his head. This is what a hedonistic son is like. When you have the time, you should also discipline your sons. They are not like Xian. Xian has been obedient and sensible since she was young. She has never caused trouble and is filial to us. As for those brats, they are all arrogant and domineering. If you don't discipline them, sooner or later, they will bring disaster to you, the city lord warned. Okay, Zhuo Tianqing nodded. No matter what, you have to give the higher-ups an explanation for this matter. Ask Elder Yu to investigate quickly. Investigate it thoroughly and tell me immediately. I'll make the next plan. The city lord said. Zhuo Tianqing asked, what about the alchemy fire and alchemy furnace that he wanted? I haven't settled the score with them for kidnapping Xian. They still want these things? Dream on. Also, that Yun Ziang, you have to investigate as well. With such a terrifying killing intent, his identity is definitely not simple, the city lord said. Okay, Zhuo Tianqing nodded. Then you go and do your work. I'll go and see Xian. She must be very sad after suffering such a huge insult. The city lord smiled slightly. Sad. Zhuo Tianqing shook his head and smiled bitterly. You don't know. I don't know what happened to Xian. She actually doesn't want to come back with us. What? The city lord looked at Zhuo Tianqing in astonishment. She didn't want to come back. This was strange. Elder, you guessed that Xian and that brat surnamed Mo. Speaking of this, Zhuo Tianqing couldn't help but frown, looking somewhat unwilling to say. Say it, the city lord urged. We are considered family, so I won't hide it from you. Elder, you guessed that Xian might have feelings for him. Zhuo Tianqing sighed. This, the city lord was stunned. What was this? A kidnapper, a kidnapped person. How could she have feelings for him? That's what I'm worried about. Look at these two people. They killed Wang Hui, so the higher-ups definitely won't let this go. If the higher-ups know that Xian has such a relationship with them, not only Xian, even I will be finished. Zhuo Tianqing looked worried. Don't be nervous. This is just Elder Yu's guess. The city lord comforted. It's not just Elder Yu's guess. You didn't see Xian's attitude when she interacted with him at that time. It felt like a couple quarreling in a fit of pique. Zhuo Tianqing rubbed his forehead. There was an indescribable irritation in his heart. Then we really can't be careless about this matter. The city lord pondered for a while and said, How about this? I'll go and talk to Xian. You should hurry up and investigate their identities. As long as they aren't from the Devil Palace, there's still room for negotiation. Zhuo Tianqing nodded and got up. Then I'll go and do my work first. After saying that, he turned around and left quickly. The city lord was silent for a while before he also got up and disappeared without a trace with a step. On the other side, beside a quiet lake, there was an elegant, small building. At this moment, a woman in a purple dress sat alone by the lakeside. Her bare feet swayed in the water, creating ripples in the water. The woman was Zhuo Xiaoxian. She looked at the clear lake, her eyes in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. Chapter 3045. Whoosh! Suddenly, the city lord landed in front of the building without making a sound. His eyes were filled with affection as he looked at Zhuo Xiaoxian, who was sitting by the lake. However, he did not say anything. He walked to Zhuo Xiaoxian's side and watched in silence. Zhuo Xiaoxian did not notice the city lord's arrival. Time gradually passed. The city lord couldn't help but stare blankly. What was this girl thinking? Not only did she not notice his arrival, she did not even make a sound. Cough, cough! The city lord could not help but let out a dry cough. He thought Zhuo Xiaoxian would be startled, but to his surprise, Zhuo Xiaoxian acted as if she did not hear it. She was still swinging her feet while staring at the lake with a blurred look. The city lord was frustrated. He let out a dry cough. Ah! Zhuo Xiaoxian was finally awakened. She immediately turned around and looked at the city lord. She was startled at first, but she quickly rose to her feet and said, Godfather, why are you here? I've been here for a long time, the city lord said with a straight face. This, Zhuo Xiaoxian's expression stiffened. She said with an embarrassed smile, I'm sorry, I was lost in my thoughts. Godfather is very angry now. The city lord harumphed coldly. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately went up and hugged the city lord's arm. She giggled, Godfather, I'm sorry. You little girl. The city lord shook his head helplessly and said with a smile, Then tell me, what are you thinking about? This Zhuo Xiaoxian stammered. Her face blushed. Who was the city lord? He had seen countless people. He immediately knew what Zhuo Xiaoxian was thinking after seeing her reaction. It seemed like Zhuo Tianqing was right. Little girl. How's the kid with the surname Mo? The city lord thought for a moment and asked. Zhuo Xiaoxian was caught off guard. He's the one you're thinking about. The city lord said. Zhuo Xiaoxian's face turned even redder. She shook her head and said, I'm not thinking about anyone. Still trying to deny it, the city lord rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Actually, I don't care who you like as long as he treats you well. However, there's one thing you must remember. What? Zhuo Shaoxian looked at the city lord in confusion. The other party must have a good character. Also, he must stand on the side of our rogue cultivator alliance. The city lord said. Zhuo Shaoxian asked, "What if he's not from the rogue cultivator alliance?" "Admit it, you are indeed thinking about that emo brat." The city lord smiled smugly. "You." Zhuo Shaoxian paused for a second, then angrily turned around and snorted coldly. "I don't want to talk to you anymore. How dare you set me up? If foster father didn't do this, would you have told the truth?" The city lord chuckled and asked, "Then tell foster father. Do you really like him?" "I don't know." Zhou Shaoxian shook her head. "Why don't you know?" The city lord had a suspicious look on his face. "I don't know if I like her or not," Zhou Shaoxian mumbled. The city lord pondered for a moment and asked, "How do you feel now that you're separated from him?" "I'm a little disappointed." Zhuo Shaoxian pondered for a moment and said. The city lord could not help but sigh in his heart. If this wasn't love, then what was? It was just that these feelings were not too deep, so he could not be sure. "Then tell foster father, what kind of person is he?" The city lord asked with a smile. "He's very fierce. He always has a fierce look on his face, as if he's a bad guy. However, I can tell that he's actually a very kind person, and I learned from sister-in-law that he's a very righteous person." Zhuo Shaoxian could not help but wear a smile on her face as she spoke. Seeing this smile, the city lord was even more certain that this girl had fallen in love with him. "Sister-in-law?" The city lord was startled. "Sister-in-law is Qin Deji's wife. They are very loving. There are a lot of people there. Some are Qin Deji's subordinates, and some are Qin Deji's family. There's also a bunch of cute beasts. However, whether it's his subordinates or those beasts, they're like a family living in harmony." Zhuo Shaoxian could not help but smile as she spoke. Her eyes were filled with yearning. "I see. It seems like those young people are quite nice." The city lord nodded. "That's why I don't want to come back. I like the atmosphere there. Even though I've been a captive all these years, they've treated me like a friend." Zhuo Shaoxian lowered her head and said. The city lord was startled. "You don't like the atmosphere in the city lord's mansion?" "I." Zhuo Shaoxian was about to say that she did not like it, but she suddenly corrected herself. "I like it, I like it." How perceptive was the city lord. He could easily see Zhuo Shaoxian's hesitation. He frowned and said, "Girl, are you hiding something from us?" "Nothing." Zhuo Shaoxian waved her hand and asked, "Foster father, why did you come out of seclusion?" "It's because of them." The city lord shook his head. "Them?" Zhuo Shaoxian was startled. Her expression changed as she said, "Foster father, are you going to kill them?" "Don't be nervous. The higher-ups only asked me to investigate the matter. They haven't made a decision yet." The city lord waved his hand with a smile. "That's good. Foster father, they're not bad people. Take Wang Hui's incident, for example. Wang Hui was the one who provoked them first. It's the same if they kidnapped me. They came to kidnap me because father was going to kill them." Zhuo Shaoxian let out a relieved sigh and spoke up for Qin Feiyang and the others. The city lord asked, "What about the incident where they used you to extort the pill flame and the cauldron?" "They're still holding a grudge after all. If it were you, you would definitely take the opportunity to ask for something as compensation." Zhuo Shaoxian said. "Ugh." The city lord was stunned and said speechlessly, "If you're already speaking up for them, what will happen when you marry them?" "Who's going to marry them?" Zhuo Shaoxian blushed and mumbled, "You silly girl. Don't worry, as long as they're not from the demon palace, I'll be able to deal with them." The city lord smiled. "Thank you, foster father." Zhuo Shaoxian immediately expressed her gratitude. You're thanking me? It seems like you're the outsider now. The city lord shook his head and let out a sigh with a sad look. No, no. Zhuo Xiaoxian immediately waved her hand. I'm just kidding. The city lord scratched her little nose and said with a smile, Then tell me, how many years have you been inside the godly object? This. Zhuo Xiaoxian was slightly hesitant. What's wrong? You can't even tell foster father. The city lord looked at her unhappily. No, no, no. Zhuo Xiaoxian shook her head. She glanced at her surroundings and said in a low voice, I'll tell you, but please don't tell father and elder you. Why? The city lord was suspicious. Because father and elder you are a little greedy. Zhuo Xiaoxian stuck out her tongue. Ugh! The city lord was startled before he scolded jokingly. You silly girl, is that how you talk about your father? It's the truth. Zhuo Xiaoxian giggled. The city lord asked curiously, Then what kind of person is foster father in your heart? Foster father. Of course it's a straightforward, magnanimous, respectable, wise, and brilliant man. Zhuo Xiaoxian said proudly. Cough, cough. The city lord immediately let out a cough and said with a chuckle, Don't tell the truth. Keep a low profile. All right. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. You silly girl. The city lord rubbed Zhuo Xiaoxian's head in a doting manner. This little girl was so adorable. He said, All right, I promise you I won't tell them. I'm sure. I've lived in the black tortoise world for 15,000 years. Zhuo Xiaoxian said softly. His space godly object is called the black tortoise world? The city lord was startled. Zhuo Xiaoxian nodded. 15,000 years. It's only been half a month outside. It's indeed a time formation that lasts 1,000 years in a day. The city lord exclaimed. Impressive, right? I didn't even know that after living in the black tortoise world for so many years. Zhuo Xiaoxian said. Impressive. No wonder you fell in love with that kid. We've lived together for over 10,000 years. The city lord shook his head with a smile. Foster father. Zhuo Xiaoxian blushed as she glared at the city lord. The city lord let out a smile and said, all right, let's not talk about it anymore. Come, foster father will accompany you. By the way, that Qin Dage, what's his real name? Qin Feiyang. What about that kid with the surname Mo? His surname is Mo. Everyone calls him Little Madman. Little Madman. You actually fell in love with a crazy person. Girl, what are you thinking? He's not crazy, it's just that his personality is a little cynical. See, you're speaking up for him again, and you're still saying that you don't like him? Foster father. At the same time, Tianfeng City, the Su family. Su Yuan was very happy, and he would drink a few cups from time to time. Husband, what good thing have you encountered? I've never seen you so happy before. The woman looked at Su Yuan suspiciously. Madam, our Su family is about to soar. Su Yuan chuckled. Is that so? The woman had a look of disbelief. Really? When have I ever lied to you? Just you wait, it won't be long before our Su family moves to Windsea City to develop. Su Yuan said. Windsea City? The woman was slightly stunned and touched Su Yuan's forehead. What are you doing? Su Yuan slapped the woman's arm away in dissatisfaction. You don't have a fever. Why are you talking nonsense? The woman muttered. Get lost, you have a fever. Su Yuan glared at the woman in annoyance and then laughed alone. The woman shook her head and was about to turn and leave. Swish! But at this moment, in the sky, a red-haired old man suddenly appeared. Su Yuan looked up, and a trace of joy appeared on his face. He hurriedly greeted him and said with a smile, Elder Yu, I've been waiting for you for a long time. The woman looked at Elder Yu suspiciously. Who was this? However, without saying a word, Elder Yu's eyes surged with killing intent, and he slammed his palm towards the Su family. Elder Yu, what are you doing? Su Yuan's expression suddenly changed. The Su family's undead stage experts also came out of seclusion and looked at Elder Yu in the sky in surprise. But Elder Yu did not explain. His divine power surged out and instantly blasted into the Su family. Boom! Immediately, accompanied by billowing smoke, the entire Su family was razed to the ground. Not a single person from the Su family was left alive. All of them had died, including the Su family's ancestor. Even when they died, they didn't know what was going on. Chapter 3046. The speed of the Su family also alarmed the entire Tianfeng city. The current Tianfeng city could be said to be without a leader, because after Wang Hui's death, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had not sent a new city lord. So, even if such a big thing happened to the Su family, no one came out to care. Of course, no one dared to come out to care. Even the Su family could be razed to the ground with a wave of his hand. One could imagine how strong this red-haired old man was, who dared to recklessly run to him to settle the score. Elder Yu did not leave immediately, scanning the people in the city below, because he still had to investigate the situation of Qin Feiyang and the others. Black Tortoise World. Everything was as usual. After Qin Feiyang and the mermaid princess were affectionate, he began to cultivate in seclusion. Lunatic also wanted to cultivate in seclusion. However, no matter what, he could not calm down, feeling empty in his heart. What's going on? This made him very irritable. Sometimes he would stroll around here, and sometimes he would walk around there trying to relax. But this irritation did not ease. Instead, it became more and more intense. The mermaid princess had been paying attention to Lunatic's abnormality and could not help but laugh in her heart. Sure enough, he was also an emotional idiot. He still did not understand. In fact, a seed had already been planted in his heart. It was just that he did not realize it. Or he had already realized it, but he did not want to admit it. Time flew. Outside, 2 days had passed. 2,000 years had passed in the Black Tortoise World. I've really had enough on this day. Lunatic's roar resounded in the Devil's Land, instantly waking everyone up. What's the situation? Everyone walked out one after another, looking at Lunatic's courtyard suspiciously. What are you looking at? Lunatic walked out, glared at everyone, and left alone. This little lunatic, is he sick? Qin Rushuang raised her eyebrows. Is he sick or is he lovesick? The mermaid princess laughed. Lovesick? Qin Rushuang was slightly stunned, and asked curiously, You mean him and Zhuo Xiaoxian? Yes. The mermaid princess nodded. Qin Rushuang was suddenly happy. This heartless guy would actually be troubled by love? Late at night, Madman ran back, reeking of alcohol. He ran straight to Fire Lotus's loft. When Fire Lotus was awakened from her seclusion, she was stunned to see the madman standing in front of her. What are you looking at? Madman sat on the ground. Fire Lotus was surprised. You ran out this morning just to drink? Can't I? Madman snorted. Sure, I didn't say no. Besides, you've reached the age of love. Fire Lotus smiled. You still have the nerve to talk about me? As the palace master of the Nine Heavens Palace, you're still alone. Aren't you afraid that you'll become a leftover woman and no one will want you in the future? Madman pursed his lips. Fire Lotus's face darkened. She grabbed Madman's ear and said angrily, What did you say? I dare you to say it again. With your fierce look, no one would dare to accept you even if you offered yourself to them. Madman's face was full of disdain. In any case, he was like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. The veins on Fire Lotus's forehead popped out. Madman said impatiently, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Send me out. HM? Fire Lotus was stunned. She let go of Madman's ear and smiled. You're going to find Zhuo Xiaoxian? No, I just want to go out and vent. I'm feeling suffocated. Madman shook his head in panic. Still not admitting it? Fire Lotus secretly mocked him and shook her head. Go find Qindage. Why do I have to find him? Can't you enter and exit the Black Tortoise world freely? Madman frowned. I can enter and exit the Black Tortoise world freely, but I can't act on my own, right? Qindage is the master of the Black Tortoise world. I have to get his permission. Fire Lotus said. Madman's mouth twitched. He said helplessly, Can you take it as me begging you? Begging? Shouldn't you have the attitude of begging? Fire Lotus said calmly. Good. Palace Master's old, leftover daughter, no. Palace Master, I beg you, is that okay? Madman got up helplessly and weakly bowed 3 times to Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus rolled her eyes at him and said, I can send you out, but don't go cause trouble. I know, long-winded. Luckily you're not my mother. Otherwise I would have already collapsed. Madman pouted. I don't have a son as useless as you. Fire Lotus glared at him. With a wave of her hand, Madman disappeared. You call me a good-for-nothing? 10,000 years old, leftover daughter, destined to be unwanted. Madman stood outside in the night sky. He snorted and flew towards Wind City. Su Yuan, come out and die. Not long after, a roar filled with killing intent resounded in the sky above Tianfeng City. Who is it? So arrogant? Everyone was given a fright and hurriedly ran out to look. They saw Madman standing in the air above the city. It turned out to be him. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. Everyone suddenly realized. Madman swept over the Su family and was ready to vent, because it was Su Yuan who made things difficult for Zhuo Tianxing to find Yunzing. Although this matter did not cause any loss to them, Su Yuan's mind was not pure. So, he planned to kill Su Yuan. But when he landed in the sky, looking at the devastated Su family, his whole person suddenly froze. What happened? How did a good Su family become like this? Don't you know? 2 days ago, a red-haired old man appeared and destroyed the Su family with a palm. Someone on the street below spoke. Red-haired old man? Madman was slightly stunned, and the figure of old Yu immediately appeared in his mind. He then asked, What about the people of Su family? They were all killed, not one left. It's terrible. People on the street were full of horror. Sure enough, Madman muttered. There was no suspense. This must be Zhuo Tianxing's idea. Exterminating the Su family was even more ruthless than them. Looking at the messy Su family, Madman shook his head and turned away. Su family also reaped what they sowed, so there was no sympathy. Clang! However, at this moment, in the ruins below, a sword light suddenly emerged, cutting through the sky like lightning, heading towards Madman. A cold light flashed in Madman's eyes, and he turned his head and directly slapped the sword light. The sword light shattered on the spot. Just a supreme artifact. You want to sneak attack me? Madman looked down with disdain and saw a black-clothed youth walk out of the dark ruins. He held a long sword that flashed with cold light. Isn't he Su Hua? When did he come back? The people on the nearby streets, seeing someone sneak attack Madman, also rose into the air. When they saw the young man in black, they immediately began to discuss. Su Hua, what is that? Madman was taken aback. Cough. He is not a thing, he is a person. He is the young master of the Su family, and he is also a disciple of the Demon Palace. He is quite talented. It is said that his cultivation has almost caught up to the old ancestor of the Su family. Someone said, I see. Madman nodded. He seemed to have heard of such a person from Su Yang. I want to kill you. Su Hua stepped into the air and stared at Madman coldly. Kill me? Madman was taken aback and speechless. The person who destroyed your Sioux family is that old thing called Elder You. Why do you want to kill me? I have been hiding in Tianfeng City for the past 2 days and heard a lot of things. This matter must be related to you. Die. Su Hua charged forward. The long sword in his hand carried a monstrous sharpness as he slashed towards Madman. Let's not talk about whether it is related to me or not. You want to kill me with your strength? Keep dreaming. Madman smiled in disdain and grabbed the long sword. Su Hua's pupils constricted. Since you have heard about it, don't you know that my body is comparable to a supreme level divine artifact? Madman kicked Su Hua's lower abdomen. Roar! Accompanied by a pig-like wail, Su Hua immediately flew out horizontally, blood spurting out of his mouth. Strong! The surrounding people were all shocked when they saw the scene. Su Hua had the cultivation of the perfect undead realm, but in the hands of this person he couldn't resist at all. What kind of monster are you? Su Hua stabilized his body and looked at Madman in shock. This was the first time he met someone with such a terrifying body and strength. Then you can treat me as a monster. Madman chuckled. He was worried that he had nowhere to vent, but he didn't expect this person to take the initiative to come to him. Since this was the case, then let's have some fun. Shua. He took a step forward and slapped Su Hua's head. Su Hua was shocked and quickly retreated. At the same time, with a wave of his hand, divine power surged out, transforming into a towering mountain that pressed down on the madman. Supreme level divine art. Not bad. Madman grinned, and the blood demon domain instantly opened. Not only Su Hua's cultivation, but even the power of the supreme level divine art also plummeted. This, everyone was dumbfounded. Even the power of a divine art could be weakened. The blood demon domain could weaken the opponent by 5 small realms. Su Hua's cultivation immediately fell to the 9 heaven realm. How could the 9 heaven palace be a match for Madman? Madman punched out, and the towering mountain formed by divine power shattered on the spot. Following that, he slapped Su Hua's face. Su Hua was sent flying again. His face was lacerated and blood flowed out. I thought you were powerful, but it turns out that you only have this much strength. Madman shook his head and chuckled. I will be kind and send you down to reunite with your clansmen. I am a disciple of the demon palace. You dare to kill me? Su Hua roared in fear. A disciple of the demon palace? Madman was slightly stunned. He looked at the crowd and asked, Are the disciples of the demon palace very powerful? When everyone heard this, they were speechless. If the disciples of the demon palace weren't powerful, then there wouldn't be anyone powerful. It seems that they are quite powerful, Madman muttered. Just as Su Hua was about to be proud, Madman suddenly changed the topic and laughed. But I am even more powerful. After saying that, he slapped Su Hua's head. Everyone looked at each other. It was fine if he was arrogant in front of the Su family, but now he was also so arrogant in front of the disciples of the demon palace? As the overlord of the eastern continent, he wasn't afraid at all. Chapter 3047. Su Hua was about to die at the hands of the madman, but at this moment an even more terrifying sword light flew out from the ruins below. The space here began to shatter. The madman also felt a fatal threat and retreated without hesitation. Boom! The sword light exploded into the sky with a monstrous aura. At the same time, a middle-aged man appeared, grabbed Su Hua, and flew away like a bolt of lightning. That seems to be a heaven-defying divine artifact. Everyone was shocked. The madman's eyes were like torches as he looked at the man's back. It wasn't just Su Hua. You want to leave after sneak attacking? How can there be such a thing? The next moment, The madman used a supreme support technique and chased after the two. The man could only see the back. He didn't know who it was, but the divine artifact in his hand was a true heaven-defying divine artifact. The other party has a heaven-defying divine artifact, and he still dares to chase? Everyone looked at the madman's back in disbelief. Outside the city, mountain. The middle-aged man sped forward while looking at Su Hua. He said angrily, "Are you stupid? Coming to Wind City alone, are you looking for death?" "Uncle, I'm sorry." Su Hua lowered his head, his face filled with unconcealable pain. AI. Seeing Su Hua's expression, the middle-aged man sighed and comforted. "Uncle knows that the destruction of the Su family is a big blow to you. Isn't Uncle the same? After all, your mother is my sister, but we need to know how to endure." "How can I endure the enmity of the destruction of my family?" Su Hua's face was filled with pain. "If you don't endure, you will die. Like now, if I didn't arrive in time, you would have died in that person's hands." The middle-aged man said angrily. Su Hua's eyes trembled as he turned to look at the madman. There was a trace of fear in his eyes. A half-step Undying Realm was able to reach this point. It was hard to imagine. "Don't worry, he can't catch up." The middle-aged man also used a support technique. His speed suddenly increased, and he quickly left the madman behind. Su Hua retracted his gaze and said, "Uncle, help me check that old man's identity." "Uncle has already checked." The middle-aged man said. "Who is it?" Su Hua asked hurriedly. "He's a subordinate of Wind Sea City's Vice City Lord, Zhuotianshen. His name is Elder Yu. Although he's slightly weaker than Zhuotianshen, he's also at the Sovereign Realm." The middle-aged man said in a deep voice, "What? How could it be them?" The Su family was bewildered. "We're still looking into it. I really don't understand. Why would your father provoke Zhuotianshen? Who doesn't know that Zhuotianshen is cruel and merciless? Moreover, he's from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. How can a small family like ours afford to offend him?" The middle-aged man sighed. "It's impossible for there to be no reason. We must investigate this thoroughly." "Even if it's Zhuotianshen, I will make him pay the price." Su Hua's eyes were full of resentment. "Don't mess around. To deal with Zhuotianshen, the Devil Hall must act. But you are just an ordinary disciple. The Devil Palace will not fall out with the Rogue Cultivator Alliance because of you," the middle-aged man advised. "I know, but there will always be a way." Su Hua nodded, his face full of gloominess. "I really regret not bringing the Blood Demon Tower." Behind them, looking at Su Hua and Su Hua disappearing in front of him, the madman was extremely angry. If the Blood Demon Tower was here, catching up to these two would be no problem at all. Decisive, he turned around and returned to Tianfeng City. Standing above the ruins of the Su family, he said, "Did any of you see that person's appearance?" Everyone was silent. 1,000,000 soul stones. The madman waved his hand, and a large pile of soul stones appeared in the air. Seeing this, a young man in black immediately flew in front of the madman and said with a flattering smile, "I saw it." After saying that, the young man waved his hand. As divine power appeared, it condensed into a middle-aged man with a square face and sideburns. "Who is he?" The madman frowned. "I don't know about that." The young man shook his head. "I know." Another old man flew in front of the madman. The madman looked at the old man and asked, "Then who is he?" The old man looked at the 1,000,000 soul stones in front of the madman, his eyes full of greed. The madman waved his hand, and another 1,000,000 soul stones appeared. The old man was overjoyed and quickly said, "His name is Su Jingshan, Su Hua's uncle. He has come to our Tianfeng City before." "Su Jingshan," the madman muttered and asked, "Then where is this Su family?" The old man stammered, the greed in his eyes growing stronger. Obviously, he wanted to take the opportunity to get more soul stones. One must know how to be content. The madman's gaze turned cold. The old man's expression changed, and he quickly said, "The Sioux family is in Tianyuan City, and I heard that it is the strongest and largest family in Tianyuan City." Tianyuan City? The madman was stunned. Tianyuan City is slightly larger than our Tianfeng City. It is said that the city lord of Tianyuan City is a terrifying expert who has just reached the ruler realm. The old man said, "Just reached the ruler realm," the madman muttered, and then he turned around and activated an altar to quickly leave. The old man and young man were overjoyed and quickly put away the soul stones in the air. Just below, a black-haired old man stood silently in the crowd, and his eyes flashed as he watched the teleportation altar disappear. Soon after, he also disappeared into the crowd. Cloud Ocean City, the city lord's estate, Zhuo Tianqing sat alone in the main hall with his head lowered. Who knew what he was thinking? Swish! A figure suddenly appeared. Zhuo Tianqing was stunned. He raised his head and saw a black-haired old man standing in the middle of the hall. "You are." Zhuo Tianqing's eyes had a trace of suspicion. The black-haired old man smiled, took out a face-restoring pill, and threw it into his mouth. Soon, then, he would become a different face. "Elder Yu?" Zhuo Tianqing was stunned and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" "When we destroyed the Sioux family, many people saw me, so I changed my appearance to make it easier to investigate the situation of those two people." Elder Yu smiled. Zhuo Tianqing nodded in understanding and hurriedly asked, "Did you find anything?" Elder Yu pondered for a moment and shook his head. "It's hard to say." "Hard to say?" Zhuo Tianqing was stunned and asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" "I went to many places in the past 2 days. For example, I did find a lot of information about them in towns and cities near Tianfeng City, but I'm getting more and more confused." Elder Yu frowned. Zhuo Tianqing was stunned and said, "Tell me in detail." Elder Yu said, "First of all, in addition to Tianfeng City, I also found their footprints in Dongshan City." "Dongshan City?" Zhuo Tianqing frowned. And after my investigation, the first place they appeared was Dongshan City." In other words, they went to Dongshan City first, then to Tianfeng City. "Also, I went to Dongshan City and Tianfeng City's Devil Tower to secretly investigate. According to the staff of the 2 Devil Towers, both of them went to the Devil Tower, and they wanted to buy the same things." Elder Yu said, "What things?" Zhuo Tianqing was suspicious. "Alchemy fire, alchemy furnace, divine sound stone, teleportation altar." Elder Yu said. Zhuo Tianqing frowned and said, "So one of them is an alchemist?" "That's what I thought too." Elder Yu nodded. "What else?" Zhuo Tianqing asked. "There are many more." This old man inquired from the city guards of Eastern Mountain City. The guards said that they did have some impression of the 2 of them. At that time, they saw that the 2 of them were new faces. Thus, they interrogated them again. According to the guards, when they were questioned, the 2 of them said that they were from Shanhe Town. So, I went to Shanhe Town and asked the people there carefully. Guess what? There were no such 2 people in Shanhe Town. Elder Yu said, "No." Zhuo Tianqing frowned again and said, "So, they were lying." Elder Yu nodded. "Then what happened?" Zhuo Tianqing asked. "I didn't find anything in Shanhe Town, so I prepared to come back and report. But I thought about it, could I have missed something? So I returned to Tianfeng City again, which was not long ago. But guess what this old man saw? I saw that young man surnamed Mo appear in Tianfeng City again, and he was also going to the Sioux family. What's more, the young master of the Sioux family, Su Hua, was also hiding in Tianfeng City. These 2 days, Su Hua had been lurking in Tianfeng City. He heard about the conflict between the Sioux family and them, so he wanted to attack them. But in the end, he almost died at the hands of that kid, surnamed Mo. Elder Yu smiled. Su Hua. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned and shook his head. He's just a stray dog, not enough to reach the apex. No, you don't know, but this Su Hua is a disciple of the Demon Palace. Elder Yu shook his head. What? A disciple of the Demon Palace? Zhuo Tiansheng was shocked. Elder Yu nodded. Then the meaning is different. He even dared to kill a disciple of the Demon Palace. He's really arrogant. Zhuo Tiansheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Yes, and at that time that kid surnamed Mo showed disdain for the Demon Palace. It was simply too pleasing to the eye. Elder Yu smiled. Disdain? Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Yes, Su Hua said that I'm a disciple of the Demon Palace. You dare to kill me? But guess what that kid surnamed Mo said? He said that a disciple of the Demon Palace is very powerful. In the end, he said that I'm even more powerful, so he killed Su Hua. If Su Hua's uncle, Su Jingshan, didn't appear with a heaven-defying divine artifact, Su Hua really would have died in that kid's hands. Elder Yu shook his head and smiled. He had never seen such an arrogant young man who didn't even put the Demon Palace in his eyes. Su Jingshan? Heaven-defying divine art. Zhuo Tiansheng was stunned. Elder Yu explained, the Su family is entrenched in Tianyuan City and can be considered one of the overlords of Tianyuan City. So it's the Su family of Tianyuan City. In the past, I heard the city lord of Tianyuan City say that they have a low-grade, heaven-defying divine artifact. The old patriarch of the family seems to be a half-step sovereign. Zhuo Tiansheng said. Elder Yu smiled and asked, Sir, you wouldn't be interested in the Su family's heaven-defying divine artifact, right? Would I care about a mere low-grade, heaven-defying divine artifact? However, they'll find out about the Su family's matter sooner or later. They might even have found out that I was the one who asked you to do it. So, this Su family is also an invisible disaster. Zhuo Tiansheng smiled meaningfully. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.